across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, it is Petrie here with you through until 1 o'clock. And this morning, midnight, we're going to be talking about Margaret Thatcher. Yes, we are. Because she became Tory leader 50 years ago today and went on to become our Prime Minister, the first female Prime Minister ever in this country, and I think across Europe as well. So much has changed since Margaret Thatcher was the Prime Minister. She also had 3 terms as Prime Minister. And I think that's the longest anybody has ever had. So she was a formidable force. Whether she was a force for good or bad will very much depend on either your memories of the time or your political persuasion. But there's no doubt about it, she was forceful in pushing through what she believed. And it has to be said that a lot of the Prime Ministers we've had since have been, well, a bit woolly, to say the least. So I wonder, I literally just want to ask you really whether you think we need another Thatcher. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be a Tory Thatcher, but if we need somebody of her stature, somebody who is ruthless, somebody who is controlling in a way, somebody who she ruled those men around her in the cabinet with a rod of iron. Not why she was called the Iron Lady, though. She was nicknamed that by the Soviets, but she liked the name the Iron Lady. And the other question I have for you, while we're looking at politics at the moment, Kemi Badenoch is saying that there's no way that she would join forces with Reform, and I just wonder, looking at the moment with the popularity of Reform, if you think that that could persuade you to vote Tory again, or do you think that Labour should lean more towards Reform? Now, I don't think any of those parties can out-reform Reform, but do you think that if one of those parties did buddy up to, climb into political bed with Nigel Farage, they would have a better chance of getting your vote? Maybe a slightly watered down Reform, or do you want the full force Reform? So those are the questions I'm going to be asking you at midnight. I'm going to be really interested to hear from you about your memories of what Thatcher changed, how she changed your life. Maybe your family were able to buy their house. 1.5 million social houses were sold under Margaret Thatcher. And whether that's been a good thing or a bad thing, I mean, it's left us in a hole now, hasn't it? But it did enable a lot of people to get in on the housing market, and anybody under the age of 30 now, and many under the age of 35, will probably never be able to buy a house at all, let alone get one for cheap rent. So there are a lot of good things that Margaret Thatcher did, but then also there was Margaret Thatcher, the milk snatcher, who took away free milk for children at primary school. I always hated that milk. It was always a bit warm, wasn't it? With a creamy... no. So I have very bad memories of that. But anyway, some good, some bad. Where do you think she's left us? What kind of legacy has she left us? And is there anything that you would like to see replicated in a Prime Minister of the future? I mean, there's no doubt about it. We haven't seen her like since. But is that a good thing or is that a bad thing? Give me a call, 0344 499 1000. Calls are charged at the national rate. And text the word TALK in your message to 87222. So that's coming up at midnight, and it is your hour. It is the full hour of phone-in, and it's the only one left to you. So please take advantage of it, and it's my favourite part as well, because I get to talk to you guys. So it'd be great to hear from you on that. Just let me give you the rest of the schedule for this evening. Kevin Schofield, political editor at the Huffington Post UK, love him. Love him. He's coming in at 11 to go through the newspapers of tomorrow. Johnny Hearn will be here as well to go through some of the movies that he's been looking at for you, with some recommendations there as well. And we're going to be talking to Bobby Carlton, who's a tech journalist in Saratoga Springs in New York. So all of that is to come. But today saw the sort of closing day for the AI summit in Paris. And all the great and the good and the not so great and the not so good were there. But one of the overwhelming things that seemed to happen was that the UK and America did not sign any of the safety regulations that the rest of the EU and other countries did. They were saying there needs to be security and safety and proper policy around AI. JD Vance, who was there, he did not agree. He said that what the EU was doing was stifling the industry of AI. And in what appears to be, and I only say appears to be, a suck-up to the United States, Britain didn't sign that agreement either. Having been, let's remember this, having been at the forefront of calling for safety and security in AI, we didn't sign it, so that we were, I suppose, on the side of the Americans, not on the side of the rest of the world. There's a lot to talk about with AI, and as usual, we have to get our AI expert and futurist, Mal Fletcher, he's also a social commentator, to join us about what's been happening. Mal, it's really good to see you again. What do you make of this summit and how it ended today?
Hi, Petrie, it's good to be here again. Look, I think the aims of the summit were quite good. There was a whole list of them, but two main ones were to harmonise the approach of governments generally to regulating AI, with the sort of ultimate goal, perhaps, of having a global governance system for AI, and secondly, to focus on sustainability, addressing the huge need for energy that will come about as AI goes forward. And they're all laudable goals, but governments, and I think perhaps especially European governments, might not be necessarily well placed to understand, first of all, advanced tech, and they're not likely, on past record, to be bold or agile enough to take action on some very important AI-related issues. Granted, America takes a more laissez-faire approach to all this. It leaves it up to market forces. That's fairly typical for the American situation. I'm disappointed that we're not engaging more closely in the safety areas that are needed. I'd like to see our Prime Minister and others do more in that regard. Instead of just talking about innovation-friendly AI, we know from our experience with nuclear development and genetic engineering, for two examples, that powerful techs do need to be reined in at times.
It was interesting to watch and to listen to JD Vance, of course, the Vice President of the United States of America, when he was talking today. I mean, I felt a palpable, almost antagonism towards him. I don't know if you felt the same thing, but that sort of very typical American, we're going to be the best. You lot are not going to be number one, we're going to be number one, and you're going to follow our example. And anybody who doesn't follow our example is basically missing out. And this is never going to have any impact on jobs. This is going to help jobs. And I saw a lot, Emmanuel Macron. I mean, there were a few people who looked annoyed, actually.
Yeah, and probably have good reason to be, especially as he was speaking in their city. I think, though, he's simply representing the desire of President Trump and the MAGA people who do believe that the market forces are the most important thing with things like innovation. I think they have a right to say they're number one because they are, in terms of big tech development, and at the moment anyway, in terms of AI, they are the biggest and the best. But that, of course, comes with an extra responsibility. And so they need to do more. For example, one of the issues that could have been addressed more in this whole thing was the explosion of the surveillance economy, the use of private data in very public ways. And, AI feeds on data. We know that. It's a very hungry animal. Already the global data economy is worth more than $3 trillion. 3 trillion with a T, and the more powerful and ubiquitous AI becomes, the more data it needs to feed it. Often data that we haven't given our consent to having been used. And so the hungrier it gets, the more of our human experience will be brought under the digital umbrella by big tech, the more of our lives will take on a digital component of some kind. And that'll become much more of an issue as we race towards what's called artificial general intelligence, which they did talk about today, especially as we blur the line between humanity and tech using things like AI implants and nanobots. So we need to remember always that tech is a good servant and could be a very poor master. I don't favour the American laissez-faire approach, but I think the Europeans are going to have to really, to use an old term, man up and be very strong and bold in taking on the power of big tech and the reach of big tech.
But you can't have both, right? You can't have in the United States sort of unfettered, unwatched growth in AI, and have Europe and other countries, maintaining some oversight on AI. Those two just would not work. So how are they? Is there a middle ground to be found that protects us from the growth of AI?
Yes, I think there is. And I don't think innovation and regulation are necessarily opposed to one another. And that's what sort of came through with J.D. Vance today. I don't believe that. I think that the two can work together. I think there'll be a middle ground. I think America will posture itself and set itself up as the big, bold cowboys of the Wild West, and Europe will be left to sort of say, well, hang on a minute, this is affecting our economies and the safety of our people, so please think again. I think the fact we have Elon Musk, who I think is doing some good work in some areas, overseeing the US Department of Government Efficiency, tells us how far technology, big tech, has come in the past decade. To have someone like that as close to the US president shows you how far technology itself has moved forward in terms of power and influence. So yes, we do need regulation. It needs to be based on ethics, and the debate that isn't being had in these summits is about setting up guidelines for the ethical behaviour of AI and the companies that build it. Questions about, how do we deal with complex situations where there's no clear right and wrong? That's the purpose of ethics, to answer those questions. We're not doing that when it comes to AI. We're still trapped in this constant cycle of talking about the technical ability of AI and not what it necessarily means to our humanity. And I'm convinced, Petrie, that the biggest question for our generation, in a sense, is not what the tech can do, but what does it mean to be human in the face of the tech? And then work from there to establish our ethics and then our regulations. I think we're getting the cart before the horse a little bit.
Is America being willfully naive, or do they genuinely believe that AI will not have an impact on jobs, that it will help people do their jobs properly? Like, you wouldn't have to lift a box anymore, you can get a robot to do that for you, so it wouldn't but then I wonder why the human being is needed if the robot can then put it itself directly on the shelf.
Yes, I think, I don't know whether it just sounds more bellicose than they actually are, but it's fairly clear. There are enough studies now globally, including in the United States, that suggest that a high percentage of jobs will be automated in the next 10 to 15 years, largely because of AI. And as I say, that's true in America as much as it is in Europe. So there will be rapid change. I think they're right to suggest that new forms of jobs will be created because of technology. That's been the case throughout history. But the challenge for us is, can we adapt quickly enough to make use of those new jobs before the AI takes those over as well? And the other thing to remember in the American scene and here is that digital tech talks a lot about innovation, but it's actually sometimes hindering innovation because it's the home to several near monopolies. And that's been true since the development of the personal computer, when Microsoft and Apple were jealously guarding their territory and buying out smaller potential competitors before they could develop their ideas. And monopolies don't necessarily foster innovation. They often suffocate it by buying up patents for ideas they have no intention of developing. And that, of course, closes opportunities for smaller, more agile companies to be creative.
But I mean, also, I mean, surely there should be oversight on the monopolisation of, as you were saying just there, if there are a couple of people, like in this country, in America, the monopolisation of the media, it's already great percentages of media in the hands of a few people. That would, I presume, be the same risk for AI, that if you have, you know, a couple of billionaires who control all the AI, what are they going to do with it, as opposed to making sure that it is open and spread evenly?
Yes, indeed. And that's why there's so much interest in the story today about Elon Musk wanting to buy OpenAI. He was at one point a major investor and one of the leaders in the pioneer phase of OpenAI, now wants to buy it out completely. And people are just concerned that it's too much power. You've got X, Twitter. If you have OpenAI, you've got both the data and the means to, in a very sophisticated way, analyze that data. That would help him with SpaceX and Tesla, but it doesn't necessarily help smaller companies to get a foothold. And the other thing about big tech in general is that it's answerable mainly to its shareholders. Its bottom line is profit and market share. It's not answerable necessarily, first off, to democratically elected governments unless it is forced by law to be answerable. So if European or other governments are serious about providing these regulatory checks on AI and promoting innovation, they will need to be bold enough to take on big tech. The present US government doesn't really plan to do that. But as I said, we found the hard way sometimes that powerful techs do need to be reined in.
That spat between Sam Altman of OpenAI and Elon Musk, there's no love lost there between them. I mean, Sam, he was offered nearly 100 billion, although the market value is about 160 billion. So he was offered 100 billion by Musk to buy this, and he said, it's not for sale. We're not selling it. I'm not interested at all. Which led, and then he offered to buy Twitter for 9.7 billion, and Elon Musk called him a swindler. So there's no love lost between these two. But I don't think there's going to be a sale either way anytime soon.
No, it doesn't look like it. They're alpha males, aren't they? Beating the chest and saying, I'm the king of the jungle. Somewhere along the way, things tend to even out because, you know, companies have to make money, as I say, and they have to attract custom and so forth. The other thing I think that was important about today's developments was that I don't know that enough was said about sustainability. We know that training AI models like ChatGPT requires energy levels equivalent to 3 nuclear power plants, according to one study. Some projections now are suggesting that by next year, global AI applications could require as much electricity as a country like Austria. And that's huge. So the future of AI and AGI can't be powered by renewables alone, at least not as we currently know them. We've been developing renewables for decades, starting with solar panels and wind turbines way back when I was at university in the 70s, and we haven't really come that far since then. So even EU leaders now recognise that France's nuclear plants might need to take up the slack when it comes to powering AI in Europe.
Wow.
We'll see developments with batteries, yes, and chips and things like that. But we're not really able to upscale those sorts of things yet to meet the needs of tech consumers in countries as big as China and India. That's a very big ask. So I think eventually we're going to have to really deal with that sustainability issue in more ways than we've done in talkfests.
Well, at least that'll give us a bit of breathing space for him, hopefully, to put some checks and balances in place. Mal, it's always a joy. Thank you so much for joining me. Mal Fletcher, there, a futurist and a social commentator. We're going to be talking to Bobby Carlton about this story as well in a little while. But right now it's time for a break.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
Hi there, good evening to you. This is Talk and it's Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock. And coming up in a little while, actually, we're going to be speaking to Johnny Hearn about some movies he went to see September 5th. Whatever. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what he's got to say about that, because I do trust his opinion. So Johnny will be in about 15-20 minutes time with that. And also we've got Bobby Carlton coming in to talk, or on the line actually. He's not here from Saratoga Springs, but he will be talking to us about some more tech stuff in a while. But let me tell you about the phone in at midnight. Today marks the 50th anniversary of Margaret Thatcher becoming the leader of the Tory party. And many people looking back on Thatcher will say, well, good riddance to her, she's gone. But there is no doubt she is a significant figure in British political history. And some people are even suggesting that we need another Margaret Thatcher to come into the country and actually do something. Now, whether you like her or loathe her, there is no doubt about it, she was formidable, and she did stand by what she said. She did what she was going to say and more. She changed the face of politics, and some people would say she changed the face of the country as well. She tried to destroy the unions. The unions had a stranglehold on the country then. They still have power now, but very much fewer of them have power. She enabled 1.5 million social houses to be sold. She wanted home ownership for people, and people were able to buy their council houses. There was a lot of good things that she did, and others would point to the Falklands War, in that she stood up to the Argentinians. So there was a lot that Margaret Thatcher did well, and there's a lot that you can look at and go, well, okay, you know, I didn't like her politics, but she was formidable. Do we need somebody else like that? Do we need somebody who's going to come in and actually, I don't know, shake the tree? You know, do something. I mean, at the moment we've got Keir Starmer, who honestly is like a wet weekend, isn't he? I mean, I can't. Even if he said, oh, I'm going to give you all a unicorn and I'm going to give you all £1 million, I'd be like, oh, shut up, Keir. Do you know what I mean? There's nothing dynamic or interesting about him at the moment. I mean, maybe he'll find his feet, I don't know. But Margaret Thatcher became Prime Minister in 1979. She served 3 consecutive terms as British Prime Minister from 1979 to 1990. I believe that is the longest that any one Prime Minister has reigned upon us. She, like I said, had a lot of stuff that she did. I mean, as a young girl, I was, you know, I was quite impressed. I mean, I just thought, wow, a woman can do that, right? You know, we'd never seen it before. In fact, nobody in Europe had seen that before. So do we need another Iron Lady or Iron Man? And where do you think that is going to be? And at the same time, I want to ask you, because the other political story that has piqued my interest today is about reform and the way that the country is now really backing Nigel Farage and the Reform Party, or the Reform Company, I should say. But if the Tories did get into bed with Nigel Farage, would that encourage you to vote in that direction? So if you're not a hugely, you know, you're a bit concerned about reform being too radical, do you think if there was some kind of partnership with Kemi Badenoch and the Tories, or even with Labour and Keir Starmer, although I think there would be a cold day in hell before that happened, but do you believe that that would make politics more akin to what we saw in the 70s up to the early 90s? I think it was James Callaghan that followed Thatcher. Am I right in that? I can't remember. But anyway, I think it was. But it was John Major, sorry. But what would have to happen to politics for you to make you want to engage in it, to make you want to vote in it. And there's no question that somebody like a Thatcher would probably do it, the stature of Thatcher, to come in and do it. So look, give me a call. Maybe you've got some really good memories of the times under Margaret Thatcher. Maybe you've got some bad memories and you'd like to say, I never want to see her like ever again. Just let me know. And I suppose your memories of her will very much fall down party line. But I do think that even those who are staunch Labourites will look at Margaret Thatcher and go, you know, there was something about her. There was something about the Iron Lady, the Iron Fist, that did this country a good in the end, that something good came out of it. So give me a call, 0344 499 1000. And you can also message me. You can text the word talk and then your message to 87222.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there and a good evening to you. It's Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock. And if you, with me at the top of the programme, we were talking to Mel Fletcher about the AI Summit. And we've now got Bobby Carlton with us now, tech journalist in Saratoga Springs in New York. Bobby, it's really good to see you. A big day for AI, although the US and the UK didn't sign those safety protocols.
No, they didn't, and that is an interesting situation we're in. And surprisingly, it's going to impact government, health policies, education in ways that we're still unsure of. But what we do know though is that it's going to benefit somebody.
Yeah. Somebody's pocket, probably.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about somebody's pocket now, because I find this spat really interesting between Sam Altman and Elon Musk, trying to take Elon Musk wanting to buy OpenAI. Now, Elon used to work with Sam, didn't he? They used to work together on this.
Yes.
And then Elon left on a point of principle, and now he wants to buy it. And he's offered well below market value, actually, about 60 million below billion.
Easily, yeah. And yeah, and interesting. Sam Altman is just flat out no. It's not for sale. I'm not going to work with you. I think even jokingly said, "Hey, I'll buy X off of you," and countered with that. It just puts us again in a situation where we are in a tech war environment where technology companies are really, and we saw a little bit, I think, in the Apple days, but it was more sort of tongue-in-cheek tech war. Steve Jobs would make his little bits with Gates, but now it's become a part of the culture that it's going to impact everyday humans, everyday lives who aren't involved in tech. And the tech wars with OpenAI, again, going back to education, workforce, how's it being used? And with Elon Musk, just now a New York Times report just came out showing how Elon Musk is really going to benefit from, President Donald Trump, and his initiatives. That Sam Altman really has to almost watch his back in the situation because Musk has
the president in his pocket. In fact, Musk has already made, I think, 150 billion in the last 2 weeks since Donald Trump came to power. Is there such a thing in America as a kind of oversight, a monopolies commission, if you like? Or would it be possible for Elon Musk to just, with his enormous wealth, go and buy anything he wanted and hold all the power?
There's nothing stopping him with this new administration.
Wow.
Now, I think a year ago, it'd be a different story. But in today's situation, again, with Donald Trump benefiting from everything that Musk is doing and Musk benefiting from everything that Trump is doing, there's nothing that's going to stop him. And it's very possible this could happen. This aggressive approach by Musk with Sam Altman, again, just shows you just how, in front that they are being about using technology, again, not just as a tool for every day, but as could be used again in this sort of tech war era that we're in.
Yeah, a form of control, maybe. But can Sam Altman be forced? I mean, he's got a board, right? Could he be forced to sell it?
Sure. Everything has a price. I mean, yes, he has a board. But there comes a point when money, there's just so much money out there that his board could turn on him very quickly. 100%.
Wow. But it was interesting today. I don't know, the media didn't seem to pick it up, but I heard Sam Altman when he was being interviewed as he was leaving the summit, and there was one person who was badgering him about Musk while he was answering other questions, and the guy said, "Well, what do you think about Musk calling you a swindler or something?" And Altman laughed and said, "He's not even a serious person." So it's already got, it's nasty, right? It's not going to end well.
It's not going to end well. It's gotten very nasty, and I think how Sam Altman views Musk is how there's people in this world who view Musk and even Donald Trump in the same way. It's not taken very seriously. However, their actions they're doing are having some impact.
Yeah, certainly are. Let's talk about Sony. The outage of Sony PlayStation 5 has created outrage because all those people who wanted to play PlayStation at the weekend couldn't for 24 hours.
They couldn't. It shut down on a Friday. Probably one of the biggest days for PlayStation players. They were working all week. PlayStation Network went down. My stepson was one of them, one of the victims of this horrific crime, and it literally locked people out. And there's a big gaming network right before the Super Bowl. People are jumping in games again, just hanging out, and unfortunately, it was one day. Sony, to apologize to its users, gave them 5 extra days of usage. So when your subscription ends, whatever that end date is, you get 5 additional playing days. Which, if you think about it, 5 days for one is actually pretty good. But Sony players, PlayStation 5 players, are they were expecting a little bit more, whether it's a discount or monies. But again, they are getting a discount. It's a
sort of. It's a bit of a cheap way of doing it, though, isn't it? Because it doesn't. Because those days don't actually. They have got no material cost, right? They're just.
That's right.
Yeah.
Petrie, if you ask my mom says 5 days for one is a great deal.
Yeah. But your stepson wouldn't have thought so. I mean, I'm just glad that my son is a lot older and probably not, I'm not going to say wiser, but and also he's not living with me. But I can imagine if he was 15, that would have been the worst day of his life. In a very dramatic way.
We'll talk about it for years, I'm sure. Do you remember when?
Do you remember? That was awful. We've just been talking actually to Mal Fletcher about the electricity that it is going to take to actually power AI going forward, and it looks like it's going to be a major issue. But cannabis also consumes an enormous amount of electricity.
So much power that actually researchers found that it can consume 100 times as much power as a Walmart or a Target store or any sort of brick and mortar store. That's how much power it takes, and it's bringing up a lot of red flags as more and more places, countries embrace the legalization of cannabis. Right now, you have environmentalists coming in, and now there's other parts of it where other conversations of government are coming in because cannabis requires a lot of energy and a lot of power, and people are asking questions, and that, of course, raises the cost of cannabis. And so, it was once where you could, on the street, you could buy, when it was illegal for like $50 or whatever. And now it's shooting up to $100, $200 because, again, of the power that's taking. And we're not there yet, but it's absolutely, it has to be addressed. And there's as more federal government rulings come in, you're going to see, environmentalists come in. You're going to see more fees come in, and it will absolutely raise the cost of cannabis.
And also not just the electricity, but the water. I mean, we're one of the biggest cannabis producers in the world in the UK, although it's illegal here.
Yeah.
It's just a hypocrisy, another one. I mean, environmentally, it would take a lot. It'd take a lot of water as well.
Quite a bit.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. This sounds awful, and I don't think I'll be plugging into it, but the AI-powered death clock.
Yes.
So tell me about this.
It is basically, if you go to death-clock.org, you can go into the death clock, give some information about yourself, and the death clock will tell you right down to the last second when you will die. It might not tell you exactly how you will die, but it'll tell you when you'll die. It'll give you information about your health as you, if you have 40 years left, how your health would deteriorate or maybe improve. But on the flip side, right, it's going to also give you tips on how to live longer. And it's more tongue-in-cheek fun, but it is AI-powered, and so there are people who are taking it very seriously.
What if I do it and it's Wednesday? This Wednesday. What do you do with that?
I'm going to fly to the UK and throw you the best party ever.
Yeah, you'd have to hire a jet, because there's a few of you out there that I really adore. Come over and we'll just party until the very last second. Right. I just think that sounds awful, and also it can't be accurate.
I don't think it'd be accurate. Again, I think I recall there was like an AI-powered sort of website, I think, for the end of the world as well. So again, but AI is an interesting thing right now, and it could be accurate. Who knows? But if you're curious, plug in.
I can't imagine anyone will want to do that. Would you do it?
People have checked it. I haven't. No, I don't even go near a Ouija board, Petrie.
No. Very, very wise. Even though I don't believe in all that, I just think it's better to be safe than sorry. Google is playing along with Donald Trump and has officially changed the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. Did you see Donald, the president, sorry, I should say, on his way, mind you, that's only if you've got respect, isn't it? On his way to, I think it was the Super Bowl, and one of his aides was standing there. It was really awkward, standing there with a map with Gulf of America on there. And the pilot even said, if you look out of your windows, for the first time ever, we're flying over the Gulf of America. It was also staged, and so actually I found it really quite embarrassing and childish. But Google has gone along with this.
They have gone along with this. Of course, if you during the inauguration, right? There was tech companies lined up on the front row during the inauguration. So, and so Google, not only did they change the Gulf of America, right? They removed a lot of their DEI initiatives, Black History Month, Women's History Month, all have been removed from Google calendars. But as for the Gulf of America on Google Maps, people have already gone in to report inaccuracies, which you can do on Google if your street's wrong, and saying that, oh, it's misspelled, it should be Gulf of Mexico. People are writing in, Mexico like MEXIC,
Yeah.
so it's been really great. It's been a lot of fun, but I personally will always call it Gulf of Mexico, and I'll stand on that hill.
Yeah, absolutely. But I was telling my team earlier on that I saw this, it was in, I think, one of our serious newspapers, that the GOP has given Donald Trump permission to change the name of Greenland to red, white and blue land.
Yeah. Well, yes.
I mean, what 4-year-old came up with that? I know. We'll call it not Greenland, red, white, blue land.
Well, did you see that Denmark recently? There's a petition for Denmark to buy California.
Yeah, I saw that.
I hope New York is also on that, because I live in New York, and I be cool being part of Denmark.
Do you know what? There are worse places. I'm telling you, Denmark's very, very cool. Meta has launched a teen Instagram account in Hong Kong. Now, I don't know how old your stepson is, but is this going to affect him?
No, he is 24. So sometimes the maturity level goes to 18. But yeah, so Meta is launching a teen Instagram account for Hong Kong only at the moment. Basically, teenagers are going to hate it, because it's going to allow them to open up a Meta account, and for those who have one already, it's going to then tell them the next time they log in that it's a teen account, and the parents will be able to log into it, have access to it, and it's going to make them basically add a parent email, so parents can then log into that account. Parents can have control, see who their kids are talking to. This is part of Meta's way of saying, like, hey, we want to protect teenagers, we want to do this. However, there's a lot of conversations going on where Meta is also doing things that don't seem like they're trying to protect anyone, especially teenagers. So it's an interesting battleground here, but it is in Hong Kong. It's rolling out in Hong Kong. It will roll out into other countries, absolutely. And so
yeah, and you know what, Bobby? Any teenager worth their salt will be able to get around all of
they'll
this.
Figure it out.
And if they can't, they're too dumb to be using a laptop.
That is correct. That's why I love you, Petrie.
Cut to the chase. Bobby, great to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Bobby Carlton, tech journalist in Saratoga Springs, New York. Quick break, then we're back to movies.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and a very good evening to you. With me in the studio now is Johnny Hearn, who's going to be talking us through some movies. And Johnny is our film reporter, critic and broadcaster and filmmaker and stuff. A lot of stuff. September 5.
Yes.
Not a sequel.
No, it's not the fifth in a series of films about September. No.
Yeah. No. This is about the Munich Olympic hostage. I was talking to Josh Rom about yesterday. So you went to see this. What do you think about it?
Yeah. This is the film about that hostage crisis at the Olympic Games in 1972 in Munich. But it's told from the perspective of the ABC sports reporting team, television team that were there covering the sporting events. And their office and their studio was only 100 yards or 100 metres or so away from where the events were taking place. And they decided that they were going to cover this live and transmit it live on air. And they sort of booked satellites and things like that so that they could give live wall-to-wall coverage of it, even though they were sports journalists and they'd never done any of this kind of thing before. And very innovatively, put massive cameras outside on the roofs, sent a reporter in sort of undercover to hide so they could get to see what was going on, and covered it to such a way that it became the biggest TV audience ever at that point in history. It beat the moon landings. It's so big. It's in the trailer. It's not a spoiler. And so it's the story told from their perspective, and the people making the decisions, the people doing the reporting and stuff like that. And it's very clever. It's all done as a kind of sort of documentary style. So it's all quite handheld. It's very close. It's all quite claustrophobic because you're in the studio, in the control room, and you're watching it as these decisions.
And do they
being
use
taken.
original footage?
And that's the other great thing, yes. So all the footage that you see that is being broadcast, so whether it's on the monitors, whether it's coming through the cameras or whatever, is the actual footage that they filmed. And they took it from the ABC archives and integrated it into the film. It's absolutely fascinating.
Brilliant. Well, listen, it's called September 5. It's a 15 only. Oh, surprised by that. It's 1 hour 35 and it's in cinemas. Let's have a listen or a watch.
There's a hostage.
Wow. That looks brilliant. I didn't realise the games continued.
They did for the first day, yes.
Oh, right, okay.
The other fascinating thing is the historical aspect, not necessarily the events, but the way that they were covered, because you have to remember, this was pre-mobile phones, so they could only communicate with each other through walkie-talkies or phone booths. It was pre-video cameras. So the cameras in the studios were the big hulking ones that recorded onto 4-inch tape, but the portable cameras that they took out and smuggled into the athletes' village were, of course, film cameras, and so they had to then smuggle in 16mm film
and smuggle it out,
and then smuggle it out so it could get processed and developed, so that they could then show it. And it's all these things you think, how on earth did people ever cover the news before portable cameras and digital cameras and things?
Now I remember in Russia putting tapes down my trousers to get.
Well, that was just your hobby.
That was just for fun, just to get them away from the KGB and trying to break, and in Bosnia breaking up camera pieces so the Serbs didn't know that I had a camera with me, and there would be somebody that would bit in one pocket and a bit, but they were smaller. They weren't that small, but this I think is going to be. I'm just so excited to see this.
It's a brilliant film. Yeah. It's been Oscar nominated.
And it feels like it's got real tension to it.
Yeah, it is, and it zips along. It's only 1 hour and 35, and it really drags you in. And it's fascinating because it's kind of very voyeuristic as well, because the way that it's shot. So it really does just grab you. I mean, I absolutely love this. It's the best film I've seen this year so far.
I'm just trying to imagine the Talk Sport boys doing that.
It would be terrible.
It would certainly be interesting.
Useless.
Not that they're not brilliant. I'm not saying you're not brilliant, guys. And a broadcaster is a broadcaster.
Not for a hostage situation.
Not for
Alan Brazil trying to talk about that. I mean, it'll be funny, but
it would be funny,
not in the way you want.
Kind of not the point. This film, Love Hurts. Even the title already makes me want to run for the hills. It's a 15. It's 1 hour 23 in cinemas.
Yeah. Well, I was going to hold this off till next week because we're going to do a little bit of Valentine's special, because it's sort of a Valentine's movie. But of course, I'm going to be spending so much time talking about how wonderful the new Bridget Jones Jones movie is. I wouldn't have time to do this.
So sorry for
obviously. I will go and watch it just for you. Yeah, so this is a film that stars Ke Huy Quan, who was the Oscar-winning actor. He was in Everything Everywhere All at Once. He was the guy that played
He's a great actor.
The little kid in Temple of Doom.
Oh, that's
Indiana
right.
Jones.
Yes,
yeah.
that's the one.
He told us a lovely story, actually, that he was at the Oscars last year and in the hotel, and he comes out of his hotel room and Harrison Ford is opposite him, and he's sort of quite sheepishly, because he hadn't seen him for so long, he goes up to him and sort of says, "Hello, Harrison." And Harrison Ford sort of scowls at him, and he thinks I'm just some kind of fan, you know.
Yeah.
And then Harrison Ford looks at him and said, "Are you short round?" He went, "Hi, Indy."
Wow.
And I was like, they hadn't seen each other for 30 years. Anyway, so he plays a guy who's a real estate agent who is living this sort of very nice life, running his little agency, selling homes, making people's dreams come true. But he has a dark past. He used to be an assassin working for his brother, and somebody that he was supposed to have killed comes back and starts to haunt them again, and his brother, because his brother gets annoyed that this person hadn't been killed, and so he then has to he gets dragged back into this life as an assassin, whilst at the same time still trying to sell houses to people and live his kind of. He keeps saying, "Yeah, I just want to live my life again. I don't want to do this."
I think I've heard this story before.
This kind of story has been done
27
so
times.
many times.
Yeah.
Somebody, trying to
get out of the Secret Service or whatever. Look, let's have a listen or a look at Love Hurts. It's in cinemas now.
When you stole from my brother, I got you out. Why did you come back?
We're hiding, and hiding ain't living. If we're gonna stop your brother, I'm gonna need the old you, not the realtor.
I told myself that I would never hurt anyone again.
Hey, are you all right?
I was in the middle of a high-intensity yoga. Can you give me a minute?
My brother said he wanted out, but he double-crossed me. Find him now!
You want the old me? You got him.
It's a...
Oh, an assassin with a conscience. Never heard that before. Did you like it?
It's all right. I mean, the good thing about it is it's only an hour and 23 minutes.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, you can cope with that.
Yeah.
Very quickly, The Fire Inside.
Yeah, so this is a true story about an American boxer, Clarissa T-Rex Shields. You've got to have a nickname if you're a boxer. Clarissa T-Rex Shields, he was the first black female boxer in American history to win an Olympic gold medal, and she was the first American athlete to win a boxing gold in sort of several decades. And it's the first half of it is the story about how, at a very young age, 16, 17 years old, she ends up qualifying for the Olympics and then coming to the London Games in 2012 and winning the gold medal. But the second half of the film, which is where it gets interesting, because that's kind of the obvious part of the story. The second part of the story is what happens to her after that. That she can't get the recognition that male athletes get. She doesn't get the recognition that white athletes get, and she ends up not having any money. She can't pay the bills for to survive or to look after her mother. But she wants to train again for the Olympics in 2016, but she can't because she's done that. And she's trying to get sponsorship, but she can't get the sponsorship because boxing is not seen as an appropriate sport for women for advertising purposes. And so that second half of the film is where it actually starts to get really interesting.
Have we got time for the clip? Let's play the clip.
If I'm training for the second gold medal, I'm gonna need exactly what the men get.
Is it the money? Is it the recognition?
Money is recognition.
This ain't just about me. It's just for all the women.
Folks around here know that if Clarissa Shields can do it, they can too.
You've seen more in your 16 years than most people seen in their entire lifetime. I want you to take that fire inside of you and turn it into something good.
Hey, yo, you represent out there. Show my.
So that is The Fire Inside. It's a 12A. It's 1 hour 49. They're quite short movies, aren't they? In cinemas now. Briefly, good?
Yeah, it's a sports movie with a conscience. It's a good. I enjoyed it.
Yeah? OK. I don't think it looks like my sort of thing, but I'm definitely September 5 is.
You will love that one, yeah.
OK. And you are going to go and
watch Bridget Jones.
Yeah, honestly, wild horses couldn't drag me into a cinema.
Will I be mad about the boy afterwards? I don't know.
I think you'll just be mad. Yeah. But anyway, thank you, Johnny Hearn. Thank you, filmmaker, broadcaster and talk film reporter. Right, coming up, we have the papers and the fabulous Kevin Schofield. will be here in the studio to take us through all of those headlines for tomorrow. So do stay where you are.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, great to have your company, and with me for the next hour, I'm absolutely thrilled to say, is Kevin Schofield, who is the political editor at the HuffP UK. Is that what we're saying now?
HuffPost UK.
HuffP.
Oh, you can call it that if you like. I've never heard that before.
We're going to go HuffP.
HuffP, okay.
Actually, my nickname was P in my family, so let's not do that. So the Huffington Post in the UK. Just before we get to the papers, Margaret Thatcher.
Yeah.
50 years ago today, as you will be aware, became the leader of the Tory party. And a lot of people, no matter which side of the politics they are on, are suggesting, I mean, we hear it all the time, don't we, that, oh, they're a fan of Thatcher or trying to embody Thatcher, even from Labour, right?
Yeah.
There's something about Margaret Thatcher. What was it about her that no matter what your politics were or are, there's something about the Iron Lady that people just absolutely love?
I think people like a strong leader. Now, whether or not you agree with that leader's political ideology or their convictions, what the convictions are, a lot of people admire them at least for having the convictions. Now, you're right, Margaret Thatcher, obviously a very divisive figure, inspires deep affection and love on the right of politics, and let's face it, a lot of hatred on the left. But I think it resonates at the moment when I think a lot of people just think that we need a strong leader, be it on the left or the right. Now, we look at America right now, they've elected Trump as a strong leader, someone who's going to get things done, make decisions, and to hell with the consequences.
No matter what those decisions are.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think maybe that's why Margaret Thatcher, her legacy, or her memory rather, is quite timely right now, this anniversary. Now, a lot of people, I don't remember when she became Tory leader. I can barely remember. But I can remember being Prime Minister towards the end.
Towards the end, because she was there till 79 till 90.
90, yeah. So I think I was
not 90 years old.
I was 16 by the time that she stood down. But I think people look back now on that time and think, well, at least she knew what she stood for, and the public knew what she stood for, and they could vote for her or against her accordingly.
Even though there were times when her popularity, the poll tax and all of that absolutely decimated her popularity, she still won because what was on offer on the other side was too weak. And she served three terms. I think that's the longest a single Prime Minister has ever served.
No, because Tony Blair, well, you know, he won 3 elections. He won 2, you're right, 2 full. She won 79 to 83, 83, 87.
Yeah.
Well, she went 87 to 92. She didn't see the whole of that
thing down, but she won that election.
Yeah, she won 3 elections, and it is amazing that even now, 50 years on from when she became leader and 35 years on from when she stood down as Prime Minister, you know, we're still talking about her.
Yeah.
Which I think
it is extraordinary because as you said, she was so divisive, but not at the time. She seemed to have a voice that cut through a lot of political BS. Do you know what I mean? She ruled those men around her. You saw these cabinet meetings where they all just timidly didn't dare speak unless they had something to say. And let's not forget, she was the first ever woman in that position in Europe. I mean, this hadn't been seen before. This was, and in its day, that was remarkable, and remarkable for little girls like me, looking at that. And my dad was a broadcaster, he was a journalist, so I was very politically quite aware, boringly so, at a very young age. But you know, there was a woman doing this job, and you can't underestimate that.
Well, you can't. Well, here we are 50 years on in Labour, still haven't had a female leader.
Mind you, Tories did have Liz Truss. That kind of makes up for not having one.
True, yeah, that is something that's thrown back in their faces. Just because it's a woman doesn't necessarily mean it's a good thing.
And Rachel Reeves, of course, at the moment, I'm the first ever female Chancellor, and everyone's going, I'll keep that quiet. And there are other women around the country going, shh.
Yeah.
We're not very happy with you.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, it is interesting. I think that, you know, we are still talking about it all this time later.
And the other thing that I'm talking about, because I do think they dovetail reasonably well, actually, is that you're looking at the changes politically around the world, and we've seen that with Donald Trump. There's an election going to go on in Germany, a very important election, to see which direction they're going to go in politically. And of course, we have reform gaining an awful lot of popularity here. And there's a lot of talk, and there always is, about I wouldn't get into bed with reform, and we wouldn't touch them with a barge pole. But of course, it wouldn't be the first time the Tories have made a deal with Nigel Farage in order not to split the vote.
Absolutely.
Can we see any sort of tightening up of any relationships in politics like that? I mean, Kemi Badenoch said it's never going to happen, which means it could happen.
No, it does.
I mean, anybody
absolutely.
politically who says it's never going to happen is lying, right?
I don't think you can completely rule it out. I mean, who's to say that Kemi Badenoch will still be Tory leader come the next
all say she won't be.
general election? Well, certainly not got off to the best of starts.
No.
So, you know, it might not be her decision to make. And if one thing about the history of the Conservative Party has taught us anything, is that they are power is what they aspire to. You know, in a way that maybe the Labour Party sometimes can be quite comfortable in opposition. The Tories aren't like that. The Tories, you know, see opposition for what it is. It's you're impotent. It's a waste of time. You need to be in power to make things happen. And if that means reaching some sort of accommodation, not necessarily a formal pact or a coalition, but some sort of agreement behind the scenes, maybe, like in 2019 when Nigel Farage stood down all those Brexit Party candidates, then I would not rule it out at all. You know, if the alternative is ushering a split right, ushering in another Labour government, then the Conservatives, I think, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, would it be more palatable for? I mean, if we looked at a Reform Tory coalition, or even if they decided that they were going to work in tandem together, there may be those who think, oh, Reform pure is too much, undiluted. That would be horrible. And the Tories don't really stand for anything. So if you put the two together, you probably have got something votable.
Perhaps. I mean, the question, or the other question is, would Reform want to jump into bed
they again have
with
said
the
no,
Tories?
but they don't want to be second place in all those places again. Right?
No, absolutely. A lot will depend on where the polls are in, say, 3 years' time. You know, if we're looking at Reform at, say, low 30s and the Tories, you know, in the low 20s or the high teens, then it's really, do the Reform really need them? Would be the question. So we'll just have to wait and see. I mean, 4 years is a very long time in politics. That's the only thing I would caution.
And this is going to be a very long 4 years.
It's going to be a very long 4 years. You think back to 4 years ago, Boris Johnson was in his pomp as Tory leader. There was talk of him being, you know, Prime Minister for a decade.
Yeah.
Keir Starmer's leadership was in complete crisis. They just lost a Hartlepool by-election. It looked like he wasn't going to hang around long. And look, here we are 4 years later, Labour are in government with a landslide and Keir Starmer's Prime Minister. So we don't know where we'll be in 4 years' time. But right now, there's no doubt that Reform are doing pretty well.
I mean, they're becoming a serious contender or a serious threat.
Yeah,
and we can see that with both sides, actually. I mean, Labour have railed back on their gender reform bill because they're concerned that that's battleground that Reform will win on.
Yeah.
And the Tories are talking more harshly on migration, which they know Reform would win on that battleground. Yeah. So it's really interesting to see how just the presence of Reform is changing the political parties that we're looking at.
Absolutely. They've only got 5 MPs. It's hard to sort of imagine that, really. When
it really
the amount
is
of
the
noise
power they've got. Yeah.
And you're right, they're driving the narrative right now. I mean, Kemi Badenoch said that she wouldn't come up with any policies for 2 or 3 years. And yet last week, lo and behold, there was a policy on immigration. Labour this week have been, you know, really hardline on immigration, videos of
showing
deportations.
Videos,
I mean, you think this is a Labour government, it's pretty extraordinary. And again, this is because they
Which
know
is something they actually said they wouldn't do. They weren't going to do that.
Absolutely. If the shoes on the, if this was a Conservative government doing it, you can bet your bottom dollar that a Labour opposition would be slagging them off. So, but it's because, you know, both parties see Reform as a threat and they need to try and counter it as best they can.
I mean, look, you can't, nobody should ever underestimate Nigel Farage.
No.
I think they've done it before, and then Brexit happened and they went, oh, crikey, right, you know, we really shouldn't do that. But will Britain be ready for that kind of politics in 4 years? Because although 4 years is a long time in politics, it's not actually that long a time.
No.
Are we ready to lurch to the right to that degree?
I'm still pretty sceptical that we are. I wonder whether Reform, certainly under Nigel Farage, have got a bit of a ceiling. He is obviously a hugely divisive figure, not least among Remain voters. But he's trying to smooth the rough edges, present himself as the moderate face of right-wing politics, you know, distancing himself from Tommy Robinson, for instance, you know, making it clear that, you know, we're not all mad racists in this party, we're a moderate right of centre, right-wing party. But I just wonder, you know, as much as he is a huge boon for Reform UK because he's a great political commentator.
Well, he is Reform. I mean, Richard Tice had to recognise that and step back.
That's why he stood aside and, you know,
just said, look, it's you.
And he put rocket boosters under their election campaign and they did very well. I just wonder whether ultimately there'll be a ceiling because he's not the type of figure that a lot of people would ever consider voting for. So that, as we get closer to an election, you know, if they can't break out of that mid-20s, if they can't get any higher than that, then they'll have a decision to make as well.
I mean, it is interesting looking at Nigel Farage. I mean, he appears to be taking quite a lot from the Donald Trump playbook.
Absolutely,
I mean, you know, you saw the farmers, was it yesterday, the extraordinary sight of all those tractors. I saw a lot of them leaving town when I was coming in on the A4. It was very bizarre. But he was the only person that turned up. I mean, Kemi Badenoch didn't bother. That was a
well, what was interesting,
missed opportunity.
What was interesting there was that Robert Jenrick was there, tweeted pictures of him on a tractor. Now he's Shadow Justice. He's Shadow Justice Secretary. What's that got to do with his brief?
It's got nothing to do.
So we know James Cleverly was there. Now
no cut through at all.
No, but he represents a rural constituency. He said that's why he was there. But you know, those were two people that went for the Tory leadership not so long ago, and I think they see an opportunity there, perhaps, just to keep their name in the frame for if Kemi Badenoch was to fall by the wayside. But you're right, again, Nigel Farage was there, made sure he was there.
Made sure he was seen, made sure he was the only vocal. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Cleverly and generic, they you know, there was no cut through at all.
No.
It was all about Farage, and that is very much from the playbook of Trump, and we can see how successful that has been for him.
Yeah.
The interesting thing, though, for me, is that Reform is still a company.
Yeah.
It's not a political party as we know it. They don't have 200,000 members, they have 200,000 subscribers. How can that continue to go forward? It must make a difference with their gathering money. It's a very odd situation.
It is, but it doesn't seem to be affecting their fundraising efforts right now. I mean, they're holding these
but
conferences.
Companies deal with money in a different way to political parties.
They do,
right?
and I'm not entirely sure how they manage to do it in line with electoral
do they
law
have to,
and the rules.
even?
Well, there's no
because
suggestion.
They're a business.
Yeah, well, there's no suggestion right now that they're doing anything wrong or
so
that
I'm just
anything can be done to
fascinated
stop it.
to know if the way they've set up the party can circumvent some of the rules that political parties have to adhere to in terms of fundraising and who they get the money from and what they do with it.
Yeah, I mean, there was no suggestion when there was a talk a month or two ago about Elon Musk potentially giving them, $100 million.
Yeah, it's gone quiet, hasn't it?
It has gone quiet. He wasn't terribly complimentary about Mr. Farage not that long ago. But there was never any suggestion that it couldn't be done, or that it could be done because they are not, a traditional political party.
I'm not suggesting there's any wrongdoing. I'm just interested as to what the differences are between a company and a political party.
In practical terms, I'm not sure there is that much of a difference because on the Elon Musk point, people were still saying he can't give them money as directly anyway as a foreign citizen. He can do it perhaps via the UK arm of X, a social media platform.
Yeah, he has to have a business based in the UK,
which is one way round the current rules, and other parties are able to raise funds that way as well. So there was no suggestion at the time that, because they are not a traditional party,
I wonder if they will
take the money that way.
Whether they need to.
I'm not sure.
Right, I just want to, before we move on to the British papers, just very quickly, I'm starting to look at US papers now because I think they're quite an interesting reflection of what's going on. The Wall Street Journal, which I think is a Murdoch paper, right?
Yeah.
And I think Murdoch and Trump have fallen out.
No, I don't think they have.
I thought maybe they did and they've made up.
I think he was in the Oval Office while he just recently while he was signing one of his executive orders. Yeah.
So I thought they'd fallen out because there was some nasty stuff going on, but they probably made friends. So this is the Wall Street Journal. Xi pursues economic fortress as a shield against US presidents. This is unsurprisingly retaliation or reaction to China, and what Trump is doing with his tariffs. This is Xi Jinping, of course.
So what it says in the story is that basically China wants to be completely self-reliant, so it doesn't have to worry about a trade war because it will generate everything that it needs internally. It doesn't have to worry about trading with the rest of the world. However, this is a years-long effort, it says, to make China more self-sufficient and impervious to Western pressure. So it would be, for instance, the idea is that all their nuclear plants, all their energy is made in China, transportation, everything basically would be produced virtually in China.
I mean, that's exactly what Trump wants for America, of course.
Well, exactly.
But, of course, China does have a lot of everything that America doesn't have in terms of minerals and metals. And he's got a glut of aluminium at the moment in China.
He has.
But surely this is what trade wars are going to do. Canada also is looking to be more self-sufficient, or to at least make trade deals with countries away from... They haven't had to before, right? Because it was all there. Why would you bother? It's kind of like, you know, I get with shopping, it's like, I can't be bothered to go further down the road, it's all in that shop. But if that shop closed down, I'd start looking around to see where I could source all the things that I needed. And of course, that's what's happening with Canada. Canada have openly said they don't trust the United States anymore. They said Trump had said they're going to get a 3-month break on tariffs, and then suddenly there's a tariff on something he didn't mention of 25%. So, you know, Canada is looking elsewhere. Mexico has started to look elsewhere. This is the effect of a trade war, surely.
Well, no, it is, absolutely, and it just shows we're in a completely new political reality now, and economic reality.
We're all going to have to become a bit more insular, maybe.
And it's interesting to see how our own government is responding to this, and that it's still, the strategy is, don't say anything to annoy Donald Trump.
Don't say anything to annoy anybody.
Well,
I mean,
well,
he's just not saying anything, is he?
No,
it's
well, that's
like,
it.
Oh, it's so boring.
So
you can't sit on 2 horses.
No, and the UK still, the trade body representing the industry, is saying, no, this will be devastating. 25% tariffs will be devastating.
But Starmer's not come out and said anything about that.
No, it's still, you know, we're in talks, and we're always protecting the national interest, but they're certainly not committing to retaliatory tariffs.
So this is where we need Margaret Thatcher.
Well, she wouldn't be wishy-washy.
She wouldn't be mucking about like this.
No, definitely not.
Yeah, you can't do that. You've got these 2 giants either side of this tiny little island. And you can't be all things to all people.
No, well that is, I think the penny will drop eventually, but it may be too late when it does.
Talking of pennies, Trump looks to pinch pennies. He's actually stopping the production of new pennies, and that has caused such a stir that somebody in the British government has come out and said, don't worry, we're not going to stop 1p's or 2p's, so you can rest easy.
Yeah. All those 1p's and 2p's that we've got in jars. Yeah, that we never ever spend.
No, never.
Can't remember the last time I spent spent a penny. I was going to say. Can't remember the last time I spent 1 pence or 2 pence. Yeah. So he's getting rid of the pennies.
Which has an inflationary thing, because if people can't charge in pennies, they'll charge in next 5 pence.
Exactly.
In
5 cents, yeah. Exactly. So it does push
it happened here when they got rid of one of the coins that we had, that there was an inflationary pressure to it. But anyway. Right, we're going to take a quick break. Kevin and I, we will be back in just a moment.
Across the UK, on on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, good to see you, I was going to say. But it's Petrie here with you, and with me is Kevin Schofield, political editor at the Huffington Post UK. And let's have a look at the Times for Wednesday. Obese staff to get weight loss jabs through work health plans. So this doesn't sound like it's going to be on the NHS. This sounds like it'll be through your employer.
Yeah, so this is office staff who are lucky enough to have private medical insurance.
Through work.
Through work, are going to begin, anyway, through one insurer, Vitality, will now cover drugs such as Wegovy, is that how you say it?
Wegovy
and Mounjaro, so these weight loss treatments. Now, they say that the extra cost involved in terms of the premiums that you pay, that companies pay, will be more than covered by increased productivity. So if
I could just imagine that conversation.
Yeah.
Petrie, can you come to HR? Right, we're suggesting, fatty, that you go on weight loss drugs. I mean, that would be so embarrassing.
It will be embarrassing. A very awkward
I'd be asking to see HR, even though I was in HR.
But this could be one of the unintended consequences. But so it's people who are severely obese, so they have a body mass index of over 35.
Right, I don't know what that means.
So they will be eligible to start on these drugs. They'll still have to pay a fee, but it will be at a discounted rate.
Whether they want to or not, though, it sounds like. You know, if your boss is saying to you, look, you've piled it on, we want you to go on the weight loss drugs, even, surely you could still say, no, thank you.
Well, yeah, you can't be forced to take medication by your employer. That would, I mean, again, that throws up all sorts of ethical and I guess employment legal issues as well. But as I say, I guess the argument would be you'd be a healthier, more productive member of staff were you to no longer be severely obese, but it would have to be voluntary. But I guess the attraction there is that, well, they may want to lose weight and they'll be getting this jab at a discounted price. So
I suppose it's like the buying a bike through work plan.
Yeah, I suppose it's the same principle, isn't it? It's meant to encourage you, make you healthier, but it's not obligatory. They don't make you cycle to work if you don't want to.
Just imagine those conversations. I mean, it'd just be awful. Oi, Gladys, put that cake down and get to see HR. I mean, it's just...
Get on those skills.
Oh, God.
Yeah, that would be hideous.
Horrendous. If I get a call from HR, I'm not going. Judge Tweak hits support for assisted dying bill. I think this is going to get thrown out, I'm afraid, at the next reading. But a dozen MPs have told the Times they're having second thoughts after its architect said that she planned to remove the requirement for a High Court judge to approve decisions. And actually, I agree with her. I don't think you need a High Court judge. I think you need medical professionals to make these decisions, and a board of them, and oversight perhaps by a judge. But they were saying that if the amount of people that had to go who wanted to avail themselves of assisted dying, that would clog up the justice system.
Yeah, that's the argument against it, and that Kim Leadbeater and her supporters say that is why they're making this change. The difficulty for her, though, I think, is that she sold it in the first place on it, look, to people who were a little bit wary about it. Look, don't worry. Ultimately, it'll be decided by a High Court judge, and I think that probably did sway a significant amount of MPs to back it. Now, the way it looks as well, this amendment being laid almost at the last minute before it goes for line-by-line scrutiny in committee, that's not a good look either, and it just looks as though they're moving the goalposts.
Yeah,
really.
It does.
And it only takes 28 MPs who voted for it last time.
It was very thin,
to switch.
wasn't it?
It was a 55 majority. If the 28 switch, then it's
dead in the water.
It's dead. So yeah.
And I think that would be a real shame, because I think this is a real opportunity to get it right. I'm a huge supporter of it, and I'm disappointed with this, because I can see already people going, well, this isn't what I thought it was going to be, and actually what is being proposed is better. But when you first hear it's going to be a High Court judge that makes the final decision, and then you're told it's not going to be, then you go,
It just sounds like it's been watered down. It's
really bad. It does. It sounds like it's been watered down. So that's the Times for Wednesday. The Daily Mail, Labour's new borders watchdog will work from home in Finland. What?
Yeah, it's a bizarre story. So this is John Tuckett. His name is, so he is the government's preferred candidate.
I wonder what his nickname was.
Yeah, exactly. It sounds like the start of a limerick, doesn't it? Anyway, let's brush
now I
over.
can't stop thinking about it. I'm going to say his name wrong now.
Let's brush over that. But anyway, so he's the preferred candidate, and there was a confirmation hearing in front of MPs today, and he revealed that he's a resident in Finland, and he's also an advocate of working from home. So presumably, putting two and two together, from what we can gather in the front of the Daily Mail, is that it says he has hinted he plans to work part of the time from home. It doesn't say he said he will, but the fact he lives in Finland, it's going to make it quite a tricky commute.
That is quite a commute, and he's a 73-year-old, so it's going to be quite a journey.
I wouldn't have thought he's going to up sticks and move permanently to the UK.
Make that decision? I mean, maybe if he's the right person for the job, but then the right person for the job, you'd think, would be resident in this country.
You would think so, yeah. I mean, I know that modern technology is such that you can work from home. It would be logistically possible. However, for this type of job, you would think you would need to be quite a lot of face-to-face time, just being around, picking things
and
up,
also watching the
grabbing
right
people
borders.
for quick meetings and speaking to them.
Not the Finnish borders.
Well, exactly, yeah. So, this is a bit of an odd one, really.
Yeah.
Because it's a very important job, obviously.
Yeah, of course.
Especially given that the government have said that they're going to reduce the immigration.
Again, it feels like an own goal, doesn't it?
It does. on the face of it, it does seem an unavoidable misstep.
It really, honestly, I don't know who's advising them, but it's a bit bonkers, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Before we turn to the Sun, let's have a quick break. Kevin Schofield and I'll be back in just a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, good to have your company. And with me is Kevin Schofield, political editor at the Huffington Post UK. The Sun newspaper tells us it's newspaper of the year, and it's talking about Wyn Evans?
Yeah.
Ready to take the BBC to a tribunal over his sacking from the Strictly Live tour. Interesting.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not sure it's the BBC's fault this time.
No,
I'm quite happy
well,
to say it is,
as we know, he was dumped from the Strictly tour over comments,
which was disgusting.
It was a disgusting remark, which his supporters, his pals, claim was a misunderstood private joke. Well, that's neither here nor there. No. I would argue, you know, the fact is that he said it, and it was made public. I think there was video evidence of him saying it, obviously, which, given that Strictly is a family show, there's kids go to watch these shows. Reputationally, I think you can understand why they decided to get rid of him. So, of course, he's perfectly entitled. He's perfectly entitled to take them to a tribunal if he wants, and he's clearly very unhappy. But I would suggest that he might have a struggle on his hands trying to get that one to.
I think it would be very difficult for him to. I mean, the only reason the comment that he said isn't absolutely everywhere is because it was so revolting that a lot of people are not.
I'm surprised actually that it's actually on the front of the.
Wasn't it the Sun's exclusive though in the first place? I think that they.
I think you're right. Yeah,
they
but
were
just
there.
Yeah, but using
press.
the actual phrase. As,
have they used it?
Yeah, it's there.
Oh my God!
That's what I mean. It's included.
I'm surprised because they blacked that out before they redacted it.
Exactly.
So maybe they're just trying to prove a point because it's their story, isn't it?
Maybe, but yeah, I mean.
You don't say that about a woman. That's just.
No, of course not. But he has obviously, according to the story, he decided to pursue this further because obviously his career is in ruins as a result of this. Because I think it's other. Jobs at radio stuff and that. I think
he's at BBC Radio Wales, isn't he?
Yeah, I'm not sure he's doing that anymore.
Sure he's doing that
and his adverts, obviously, the Go Compare adverts. I'd be surprised if there's any more of them.
I'd be surprised as well. But basically, he's saying it's so unfair. So is your blatant misogyny, mate. That's what I would like to say. The Eye. UK savings rates cut by 30 banks and first mortgage deals under 4%. Well, that's what happens when you cut the overall rate, isn't it? That savings go down.
Well, yeah, and it swings and roundabouts, isn't it? If you're a saver, it's not great because savings rates have come down. But if you've got a mortgage and you're on a variable rate, then it's good news because interest rates.
How many people, though, do you think are on a variable rate these days? Because you wouldn't take the risk, would you?
No, and people like myself who fixed a few years ago when it was still low.
Yeah. When does that run out?
They will end of next year. Yeah. Well, it says here. It's basically experts predict that interest rates are set to stay at 4% for years to come, which, to be fair, that is was always the kind of normal, wasn't it?
Yeah, I thought it would go down to 3.5 and stick there.
Yeah.
Rather than go any lower.
But when it was 0.5, 1%, I mean, it was that for a long time.
You don't probably remember, and it was 16%, mate.
So my parents bought their council house. Getting back to Margaret Thatcher, they bought their council house way back in the 1980s, and I don't remember. So at the time, but my mum has repeatedly said to me at one point.
That makes me the same age, same age as your mum.
No, my mum's older than you. And my interest rates were, a way up.
16% they got to. It touched 16%, but it came back down to about 15.75.
Which is just remarkable, really. You can't
and if you imagine that now, I mean, that was one of the main reasons I think that Gordon Brown separated, because that was under government control then.
Yeah.
So the government were trying to control inflation, and it was actually Gordon Brown that said, no, we need to separate the bank from the government, and it's the best decision he ever made.
Yeah, it takes the politics out of it.
You can't have the politics.
It takes the politics out of it.
You can't have governments deciding to do that, because that's just the easiest lever that they pull every single time.
Exactly.
Without actually doing any hard work. So that's the Eye, the Guardian. President Volodymyr Zelensky has come out and said, look, Europe cannot protect Ukraine without America's help. So without Trump's support. But I thought Trump had just done a deal for $500 billion worth of minerals, because Ukraine is very well stocked with the sort of stuff that Trump needs. And there is some hope, I think, that will lead to him supporting.
Yeah, I mean, he's very transactional, Donald Trump, you know, more so than ideological, I think, when it comes to things like this. You know, it's like, well, what can you do for America, basically? And there is, in this interview, he talks about offering US companies lucrative reconstruction contracts and investment concessions to try to get Trump on side. I mean, that, you can see that working, actually.
Well, they've been offered to the UK as well, I'm sure, and other countries in Europe.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's normal procedure, I think.
No, it is, yeah. Those who are helping us to save Ukraine will have the chance to renovate it with their businesses, obviously getting involved. Yeah. But, as I say, it's the type of thing where that would cut through with Trump. I think arguments about defending freedom and protecting Europe, I don't think he cares about that. But if there's money in it for US businesses, it'll be good for the American economy.
Maybe, does he want to own it, though? Is he going to own Ukraine?
That's it, yeah. I mean, he's going to move Gaza, everyone in the Palestinians are going to move them to Ukraine.
Do you know what? That's not a bad call, actually. It's a big country. But also, it strikes me, of course, that there was some leak, I think just before the weekend or over the weekend, on America's plan for Ukraine and Russia. And that was basically to give Putin everything he wants. It seemed that, you know, to annex that part, the bit that he's won, he can keep. And that's why we're seeing Ukraine pushing where they are at the moment, trying to push back, because they want to have something to bargain with. But the area that they've managed to take is impressive, but it's not nearly as big as what, of course, Russia has taken. But they would have the whole of that region right the way down. And it's taking in Crimea as well, it would be a big win for Putin.
Of course it would, absolutely. And what Zelensky says here is that he's ready to negotiate, but wants Ukraine to be able to do it from a position of strength,
which is why they're pushing.
Which is why they are pushing back. So I think J.D. Vance has gone to the Munich Security Conference at the tail end of this week, at which we expect him to set out what the Trump peace plan actually is. So I guess we'll have a better idea at that point.
I just fear
I think it'll be along the lines of what you've said.
I really fear that Ukraine is going to be stuffed on this.
Well, he made big promises, didn't he, Trump, in his election campaign, that he would end the war. Yeah, he's not met that pledge, but he has said he wants to end the war, and as I say, he's transactional rather than ideological.
But it doesn't seem that, I don't know what transaction he would get from Putin. I mean, he's also talking about a green zone, isn't he, between the two countries, once Putin has taken what he wants, manned by European forces. I mean, he's offering... right, you Europeans can do this. Come on, hang on, we haven't said we will do that. So he's like the ruler of the world at the moment, Trump.
He's quite high on his own supply right now, isn't he?
Yeah, he is a bit. Yeah, he thinks... I was just saying as well earlier on that you know how he's renamed the Gulf of Mexico, and apparently he's been given permission by the GOP to rename Greenland Red, White and Blue Land.
So that was the story broke this afternoon. That is the Republican...
Tell me it's not true.
No, it is.
It is true.
Well, what's happened is the Republican representative for Georgia, can't remember his name, has tabled legislation which would give President Trump authorization to buy Greenland and change its name to Red, White and Blue Land.
I mean, you honestly, it's the best story. Yeah. And I read it and I thought, no, this has got to be a joke.
I thought it was a parody. That can't be a real representative. But yeah, absolutely.
But what 4-year-old went, I know, we'll call it Red, White and Blue Land. What is wrong with you
That's
people?
What I mean when I say they're getting a bit carried away now. He's signing all these executive orders. His approval ratings are through the roof. He's been cheered at the Super Bowl. You know, everything is going right for him right now. He's just doing what he wants, and I don't know, it's the phrase, you know, jump the shark, you know, have you actually just gone that little bit too
red,
far?
white and blue
Red, white,
land.
and blue land, you
It's
know.
my favourite.
Yeah,
it's my favourite.
It's very funny.
I wonder what the people of Greenland think about that. But I did see that and think, you know, if I'd written a script and gone to somebody and said, this is what, they go, no, come on.
Yeah, no, it's a bit far-fetched.
I mean, Riviera of the Middle East, yeah, we'll buy that.
Yeah.
But we're not buying red, white.
Red, white and blue line. But it's like something from a comedy, isn't it? It's like a satire, really.
Honestly, I can't wait to see what Saturday Night Live do with it. Because, you know what? I wish we had a Saturday Night Live type programme.
Those wouldn't be as good, would it?
It wouldn't be as good.
That's the problem. Those would be
They
rubbish.
are so funny.
They are so funny.
And they really take the mick. There's proper satire there. I love it. I love it. We've got nothing like it.
No,
unfortunately, they are so talented, and it's very, very funny. Right, let's take a quick break. So Kevin Schofield and I will be back in just a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hi there. I'm glad you can join us for this paper review. It's myself, Petrie, and Kevin Schofield. The Daily Telegraph, this is a headline that'll terrify most people in this country. Court gives Gazans a right to settle in the UK. And this is at a time, of course, when Donald Trump is looking to offload 2 million people somewhere in the world, anywhere. He's already suggested the UK. But there's a court now that has said that they've been granted the right to live in the UK after applying through a scheme meant for Ukrainian refugees. This isn't all 2 million of them, by the way.
No, so this is a family of 6 seeking to flee Gaza, and they've been allowed by an immigration judge to join their brother, who's already in Britain, saying that the Home Office had breached their human rights by rejecting their application. So the Home Office rejected this application because it was made under the Ukraine family scheme, which was obviously set up after Russia's invasion back in 2022. But you know, the clue is in the name. It's the Ukraine family scheme. It is open to Ukrainian families, not families from other parts of the world. Now, this family say that that was the scheme which most closely related to their own personal circumstances. But as I say, the Home Office said, well, you don't qualify under that scheme because you're not from Ukraine, and they rejected it. They appealed, and this immigration judge has said, actually, you know what, you should be allowed in. So, which I think throws up all sorts of questions as to whether it should be up to judges to decide, to basically overrule government policy. When, it's the government, we can vote them in and vote them out, whereas judges, we can't. But they seem to just be making up the law.
Whatever settles with their particular own politics or viewpoint.
And I think it plays into the hands of those who think that the judges have just completely lost the plot.
Yeah, and without a shadow of a doubt, because of what's happening in that region, we will get a lot of refugees, asylum seekers, and the like, and that will increase, because whenever the West gets involved in countries where it shouldn't really be involved, this is what happens, and this is why we have such high movement around the world.
And why there's so much illegal immigration, because there are only so few actual legal schemes.
Yeah. Well, there aren't any outside of the country. You have to be here to get it.
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah. So there isn't a scheme. If the government wanted people from Gaza to be able to seek refuge in this country, they would set up a Gaza family scheme like they've done for Ukraine. But they haven't. Because
they know how unpopular that would be.
Well, absolutely, and there's no prospect of them doing that.
And there's no prospect of them doing that.
But
and
now
so
that
a judge doing it opens the floodgates.
It does. It's what's to stop others from making the same application.
Well, it won't stop them, will it?
No, absolutely, and encourage them to happen, and then it'll be up to the
now that one has been approved, that's their test case, isn't it?
And then does it mean that the government, now that Labour have to draw up emergency legislation to try and block people from Gaza using this scheme to get into the country? It becomes you open up a whole sort of can of worms.
Can of worms, yeah, indeed. That's going to be a big story, I think, on Wednesday. Rachel Reeves, she was the first ever female chancellor. Did you know?
Doesn't like to talk about
it. She has now, we knew this weeks ago, that she's wiped out the 9.9 billion headroom, this fiscal headroom that we keep hearing about, and she's left herself without any money, and she'll now have to raise taxes.
Yeah, this is the National Institute of Economic and Social Research. Have basically confirmed what we already knew. I mean, 9.9 billion headroom in the context of the UK's budget is tiny. It's tiny. Anyway, so it was always for the birds that it was going to survive, and now they've said it's definitely gone, which means obviously it leaves the economy exposed for any shocks, like God forbid another pandemic or who knows, a recession, anything at all, another war somewhere, whatever. And it means that she's left with either she can't borrow anymore, so she either has to cut, having said that there'd be no more austerity under Labour, or put up taxes, having said there won't be any more taxes. So,
but the thing is, she also said that would only be one, what she called it, fiscal event a year, and that is October.
Yeah.
But it looks like she's going to have to come back with her begging bowl this spring.
Yeah, well, it does look like it. We have the Office of Budget Responsibility. They give their verdict on the nation's bank balance effectively in March, and the Treasury or the Chancellor has to respond to that. And you're right, now they will say, oh, it won't be a fiscal event. They'll call it something else, but we know it's a budget, another mini budget.
Yeah, and of course it'll be.
We know what happened with mini budgets in the past. So if she has to do that, then I think politically she's in a world of pain.
And at a time when we're a nib at the bottom, they're saying UK at risk of 24 billion blow from US tariffs.
The good news just keeps coming.
It just keeps rolling in. Daily Express, MPs must back crucial right to die law. I think that boat has sailed tragically, but that's Dame Esther Ranson talking about
yeah,
that.
Well, obviously this is her big campaign, because she has inoperable lung cancer, doesn't she? Yeah.
She does.
And she wants to see this passed while she's still alive. But yeah, as we discussed earlier, I think it's going to be quite tricky now. I think
I'm really heartbroken that this just seems like a real kicking yourself in the nut. Can I say that? The Daily Star FBI finds 2,400 new documents on assassinated president after Orange Man Baby pledges to reveal all. And in one of my marathon sessions of watching everything that America does at the moment, I saw him signing the executive order on, I can't remember where he was. Was he on the toilet? I don't know.
But whatever it is, he's got that desk.
Yeah,
the resolute desk. He takes everywhere with him.
It's round his neck. Yeah. Every time he sits down, there's a desk there. We were marking, actually, that his desk and his face are exactly the same colour.
He's definitely got more orange.
He definitely has. But anyway, he said, this is a big one. They're all big ones. This is a big one. And we're going to find the truth. It's going to be all the truth. So these are releasing the files on the assassination of JFK.
Yeah, and according to the Star, so apparently the FBI have found 2,400 never-seen-before secret files. Well, we knew that.
Why have they not seen them?
We knew that. It's because they're secret. That's why he's having to open it. It's not like they've found them. We knew they were there. They just hadn't been released before. So anyway, yeah, I'd be astonished, and you can play this again if I'm completely wrong, but I'd be astonished if it solves the mystery.
If it isn't exactly what we think it is, yeah, exactly. The secret files. After Donald Trump demanded the truth to be revealed. Okay, well, all right. Well, we'll wait and see what they say. It's going to be very boring for those conspiracy theorists, I suspect. It's not really going to do the thing. Trump trades backfire as greenback weakens, that's of course the dollar, and bond yields come down. The markets are really weird, actually, with his threats of tariffs. They sort of carry on as business as usual for a couple of days to see if he actually means it. And then they react. I've never seen that before. Normally, if somebody of that power would say tariffs, the market would, all the futures markets would be destroyed, all that. So, and they're just going, wait and see if he means it. Already, it's like the little boy who cried wolf.
Well, totally, because you just know that he'll say it one day and he'll wake up and say something else the next. I mean, he was going to put tariffs on Mexico and Canada, but they folded on border controls.
Well, they didn't. They'd already given those concessions to Biden.
Well, yeah, but then he tried to paint it as a reason,
as a new thing, but it wasn't a new thing. Yeah.
So, yeah, I think with Trump, it is wise to just wait a little bit just to find out exactly what position he eventually lands on, because it's not always the first one that he says.
It's also interesting that the King of Jordan, of course, is with Trump, and the King Abdullah, and they seem to get on very well. And it looks like Trump's going to be able to do some sort of deal with Jordan over refugees.
Yeah, I mean, his quote here, he's reiterated his plan to own and develop Gaza.
Yeah,
but he says
doubling down on it.
There's nothing to buy. We're going to take it. We're going to hold it. And we're going to cherish it, apparently. But obviously, King Abdullah of Jordan had already pushed back on the suggestion that they take some.
They said 2,000 of the sickest children they're prepared to take.
But yeah, which still leaves just under 2 million.
Yeah, 1.8 million.
So
Yeah.
It does. The body language is interesting as well, isn't it? It doesn't look like the warmest handshake.
No,
between the two of them.
Look, basically the king has got an excuse at the moment, because he can say, look, I'm not going to say anything until I've spoken to Egypt.
Yeah.
And they're having this big meeting.
They are, yeah.
But he's already said, Egypt has already said, well, we could be part of build. I mean, they've all got their little snouts in the financial trophy. They're all seeing big profits, big money to be made out of these poor people. And I don't know if the Gazans are going to get any consideration or look in on this.
No, they're not.
Plus, you've now got Hamas saying, and part of it is this, what's the point? We've got nothing to lose.
Yeah.
Saying they're not going to release hostages. Trump wading in and saying, if you don't, it's all out hell.
And
Netanyahu echoing his
12
leader.
12 o'clock on Saturday. Yeah. If the hostages are not all released, then it's back to war.
It's and it will be back to
absolutely.
war, because they want to decimate Gaza.
And they've been given the green light by
Donald Trump
as well.
And they want to do that.
America's not there holding them back.
That's part of the plan. They've always wanted this real estate. I'm sure of it. I'm absolutely sure of it.
And the
poor people there are just going to get no thought or anything. Anyway.
Definitely.
This story, just very briefly, because we're about to run out, but absurd, we cannot sack rogue cops.
It is absurd, and I can absolutely understand why the Met Chief, Sir Mark Rowley, has said this ruling that they can't sack officers facing allegations, in some cases multiple allegations of sexual impropriety, and they can't sack them.
Ridiculous. Kevin, thank you very much indeed. I'm about to pack my suitcase. You can come with me if you like. I'm going to Red, White and Blue Land. Thank you very much. Right, coming up, it's you and me now, just us, and we are going to be talking about Margaret Thatcher. Why, you ask? Well, it's because 50 years ago today she became leader of the Tory party, and people are still talking about the Iron Lady, still talking about what she gave, what she brought to British politics, and many people lamenting the fact that we don't have a Thatcher today. So is it time that we had a Thatcher 2.0? Do you want to see that kind of strong leader? And where do you think we're going to find it? Do you think that strong leader is in Nigel Farage? Do you think he would be Thatcher 2.0? Kemi Badenoch, maybe she would? I don't know. Listen, give me a call. Maybe you've got some memories of Thatcher. Did you think she did a good job or a bad job? See you in a bit.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, good morning. This is Petrie here with you, and this is your hour. It's your hour to talk back. It's your chance to have your say on the stories of the day. And I chose this one because I thought there'd be people could reminisce a little bit about an era where we keep looking back to. We keep looking back to this time in our history as being something special. Not always in a good way, but certainly it was a time when there seemed to be some hope, I think. And those were the Thatcher days. And the reason we're talking about Thatcher is because 50 years ago, I'm going to say today, for the sake of argument, it was only a couple of minutes ago, she became the leader of the Tory party. First woman ever to hold that position. In fact, Labour still hasn't had that, have they? But also then, shortly, that was in 1975. And then in 1979, she became Prime Minister. First female Prime Minister this country had ever seen. And in fact, the first female Prime Minister, I think, seen anywhere in Europe. So she was extraordinary in that way. Love her or hate her. And I think that's where this conversation will go. There will be those that hate everything about Margaret Thatcher, everything that she did. And there will be those who love everything that she did and wish that we had a leader of that calibre today. Look, there's no doubt about it that the leaders that we have today are wetter than a haddock's bathing costume, right? I mean, I think that's fair to say. That you know, we had Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss and you know, the only one that had a bit of a spark was Boris Johnson, but he was hoisted by his own petard, wasn't he? And maybe Tony Blair for a while, but nothing like Thatcher. Thatcher, the milk snatcher. Thatcher, who did a lot in this country. She was Prime Minister 3 times. She was voted 3 times to be Prime Minister, and that's the most times I think of any Prime Minister. And she went through highs and lows. There were really bad times. The poll tax, for example, was a disaster. And she was even voted in then because Labour's offering was so weak that the country even went, no, we can't do that. And of course the Falklands War helped her as well. But she was in power from 1979 to 1990. And a lot of people do look back on those years and think, oh, it's what we need now. It's kind of what we need now. Somebody with conviction, somebody with strength, somebody who does what they say they're going to do. And there may be many of you at the moment going, well, that's Donald Trump. That's what he's doing. And that, I think a lot of people are very bored with the same old, and the whole kind of like, I mean, look how wishy-washy Keir Starmer is being over America and the tariffs. And I mean, where is he? I mean, like I said, wetter than a haddock's bathing costume. I just can't bear it anymore. But I want to know if you think that she did some really good things. I mean, the right to buy, 1.5 million council houses, or social housing, was sold under Thatcher. 1.5 million. Of course, they were never replaced, which is why we're in the trouble we're in today. But is that what we need? Do we need another Thatcher? Do we need, you know, there will be people listening who, under the right to buy, manage to get their family on the housing ladder. That cannot happen today. I mean, Angela Rayner's going to stuff it all up for people anyway. She's pulled the ladder up, hasn't she, after right to buying her own house. She's going to make it more difficult for everybody else, which is fairly typical of anybody in power. But there were good things and there were bad things. Some people say she created an expectation of improvement. She was about the individual. She was saying, you know, we're not going to help you. You can help yourself. You know, you take responsibility for yourself. And I do think we could do with a bit more of that these days, to be perfectly honest with you. But home ownership, a foundation stone of Thatcherism, peaked at just over 73% in 2007. So 73% of us owned our own homes after she left office, but directly as a result of her policies, it's now down to 65%. Owning a property has become near impossibility for most people under the age of 30, and a considerable number under the age of 35. Others are saying that we these days have developed a victim culture that she would never have tolerated, that it would have her spinning in her grave. So there's a lot to be said about Margaret Thatcher and what she stood for more than what she did. And there are those of you listening to this going, oh my God, I hated the woman, vile, She was, crushed the unions. She didn't want anybody to prosper. She was evil. She stole milk off babies. That milk was disgusting. It was always warm with a big, thick head of cream on it. And ours was always left outside, so it was nice and warm, and the birds would always peck at them. It's disgusting. It was revolting. But Margaret, she was replaced by John Major. Let's not forget, he's the greyest man, isn't he? He makes Keir Starmer look dynamic. So give me a call. I want to know, do we need Thatcher 2.0? What do you remember about her time? 50 years and people are still talking about Thatcherism. People are still talking about the Iron Lady. People are still referring to her when they say she was the one, she was the one that held this country together. She was the one that we need more people like her, even if you hated her. You can't help but look at her and look at Keir Starmer and keep doing that and seeing the difference. I don't want Thatcher again, but I'm not sure I want Keir Starmer either. In fact, I know I don't. I can't bear wetness. It annoys me. Gemma is in Staffordshire. Good morning, Gemma. How are you?
I'm all right, thank you. How are you?
Good, I haven't spoken to you for ages.
I know, well, there we are. I like to save it so that when I speak to you, it's really special.
Oh, bless your heart. As long as you're still listening, we don't care. Right, tell me, what do you think about Margaret Thatcher?
Well, she was a big spectre in my life because my mum and dad were Labour voters.
Right.
So they didn't really like conservatism. But my dad had met her when he was the head teacher and she was the education secretary, and apparently he'd had sort of school dinners with her. So he respected her at that point. But then when she became leader, it was like, I used to walk out in my village and find out what people voted and that, and then if I found out that they were Conservatives, which was basically everybody apart from me and my dad and mum, then I'd be like, that one's a Tory, like that. And that's terrible.
And that was the worst thing they could be, was it?
Yeah, because I was like the only socialist person within 50,000, it felt like, miles. So as soon as I got my balls about me, I was like, you can go and you can go.
Yeah. Do you think she did any good?
Good. Yeah, I do actually. I think she gave lots of people in Britain, particularly small business owners, a feeling of that she believed in them. Yeah.
Well, she was a grocer's daughter, wasn't she? Yeah. And had elocution lessons and all of those things.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, the voice coach thing with Starmer is a bit of a red herring because, I mean, he does actually need a voice coach, and I don't mind the fact that she went there, but I'm annoyed that he received her there. And then there's the whole voice coach thing as well with Margaret Thatcher, because that voice was a droning yawn, wasn't it?
Yeah, but it did command. I mean, she turned it into being quite clippy. I mean, I think she terrified the politicians around her. But, so what do you think that she did that was good? I mean, you can point to home ownership, but now we're in a position where people can't have council houses because they were all sold off.
I think she's given the population, the boomer population, some confidence. And at this moment, there's only a very few of them that aren't living the life of Riley. And that's the ones that were promised their pension, the moany-wonies. But, Mrs. Thatcher just presents, keep going, you'll get there in the end type of thing, The woman's not for turning. Yeah, everybody wants somebody in the Labour Party, apart from Keir Starmer, to run the Labour Party, because there's plenty of them that are better than him on all levels. That's what Mrs. Thatcher would be saying to the Labour Party.
Yeah, and look, whether you loved her or hated her, you certainly couldn't ignore her.
Oh, no.
And I think you can ignore Starmer.
Oh, I do.
I'd like to, but unfortunately I have to watch everything that he's in. I'm going to have to watch PMQs tomorrow as well. I'm dreading it. Wednesdays have become really real nightmare.
Hey, my dad got in The Guardian.
Hey?
My dad got in The Guardian. He passed away at the weekend and he got mentioned in The Guardian. Yeah, 93. All right. No, he lived 93 years.
Wow. OK, that's not too bad then. That's all right. Well, I'm sorry for your loss.
I managed to advertise the death of The Guardian. Did you know that? Got 90 quid for 5 words. And then you got to pay £4 for The Guardian.
What?
On top of. Yeah.
Blimey. I think when my dad my dad died because my brother's a journalist as well. He wrote his obit, and there was quite a big obit because my dad was a broadcaster. So I don't know whether I think Andrew probably got paid for that, rather than the other way around.
Are you Bob Hosken's daughter?
Yeah, well, everyone thinks I'm Bob Hosken's daughter, but no, I'm actually John Hosken's daughter. Even Bob Hosken, I met Bob Hoskins once, and
did you say can I have a pee, please, Bob?
No, Bob was there, and my name was spelt wrong on it said Petrie Hoskens, and he came over and he said, "I see we've got the same name," and I said to him, I was very young, and I said, "Yeah, everybody thinks that you're my dad." He wasn't happy. He wasn't impressed, I can tell you. He left quite quickly. Gemma, good to talk to you. Right, I'm going to take a quick break now. When we come back, we're going to continue talking about Margaret Thatcher. What was her legacy? What was the best thing that she left us? And what was the worst thing that she ever did? 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, good morning to you. It is Talk and it's Petrie here. And we're talking about Margaret Thatcher because 50 years ago she became the leader of the Tory party. In 1975, and then in 1979 she became the first ever female Prime Minister of this country as a Tory. In fact, Labour still haven't had a leader that's a woman. But we have Margaret Thatcher, and people still talk about her. I mean, I don't think anyone's going to be talking about Liz Truss in 50 years' time. And I don't think people will be talking about Theresa May in 50 years. In fact, I don't think they'll be talking about Keir Starmer or Rishi Sunak either. So or Keir Starmer. So they don't have that. There's something. Maybe it was of its time. I don't know. But it also, she had something, and she had a strength of character and the Iron Lady. She was nicknamed that by Russia, and people still hark back to when we had a strong leader. Didn't agree with her. You may not have agreed with anything that she did, but there are a lot of people who did well with Thatcher, the homeowners, people buying their council property or their social housing. 1.5 million houses were sold under Thatcher. And it's just interesting for me to kind of gauge where you are politically with this. And I wonder if even if you are a staunch Labour supporter, are there any of those left? Whether you look back on Thatcher with horror and you don't see anything good that she did, or you look back and say, well, look, you know, I'm Labour through and through, but she did achieve this, she did achieve that. Of course, the one thing that she did achieve was crushing the unions, didn't she? That miners' strike that went on for a year, and they went back to work having gained nothing from it. So, you know, some would say that's brilliant, others would say it was completely wrong. Let's talk to Jason. Jason, I was just getting to your story yesterday and you disappeared.
I know, and I was talking to myself for about 30 seconds after it went on.
Did you? Were you wondering why I wasn't commenting?
Yeah, I was like, oh, thank you, and then I realised it had gone off. Oh, God. I left you on a bit of a cliffhanger with that one day.
Yeah, it was a bit like an EastEnders episode, to be honest with you. Why Japan?
I'm like doing on the crime rates, and like this country's talking about Margaret Thatcher as well, and she clamped down on the football hooligan problem back in the late 80s when she come into power, and she clamped down on it. You know what I mean? And it's just set up when I said Japan. They've got the prisons in Japan. They've got like a military regime. You know, putting people in the place, making them be accountable for their crimes and whatever else. Like, you know, and whereas in this country, people in prison are having an easy life. If you ask me, you know, like, and there ain't a real deterrent in this country for crime.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you can safely say that Margaret Thatcher wasn't going to take. It wasn't going to be soft, was she? She wasn't soft on any decision that she made. She was tough.
She didn't take any prisoners in that sense.
Yeah.
You know, like, I mean, I wasn't a big fan of her. I mean, I was young back then as well, like, but I wasn't really a big fan. The only thing that I felt she was the strongest point she had was when she, like, the Falklands, the Falkland War, getting in there and protecting the people, you know, the British people that live there in the Falklands. But, and we need someone like that now, to be honest. Somebody, not to go to war, I'm totally anti-war, you know what I mean? But, like, somebody that's got balls, who's going to stand up for the country, who's going to stand up for the people of the country. Not just, and when I say that, I don't mean, like, the indigenous white people. I mean the people that have lived here, the first generation, second generation, like, of immigrants as well, that have worked and contributed to the country. You know, and I just feel like they're being, everybody, even the immigration that's come in 50 years ago, is being pushed out, being pushed away. They're not being forgotten about. We're being overcharged for taxes and everything. It's just getting really silly now. The country is really silly.
Yeah, it does feel like we haven't had a political party work for us for quite some considerable time. But I think also we're in a position now where we do need somebody who's going to stand up to Donald Trump. And to what?
Well, to anyone really, you know what I mean. Even to Putin, to whoever. You know, we ain't going to be. No, somebody's going to stand there and say, "No, you're not going to bully us." You know, we're going to stand our own ground. We're going to make this country. I would say, like, go on that promise to make Britain grey again. I'm just saying, we're going to make these people and make the country worthwhile for the people that live in it. That they've got something to be proud of.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And I think Margaret Thatcher, I mean, you know, having, you know, my father was working at the BBC at the time, and he, you know, did a lot of politics and stuff like that. So I sort of grew up around, you know, even from very early age, hearing about politics and you know, and at the time Thatcher, you know, whatever she did, it seemed she did make people take responsibility for themselves. You know, the whole thing about home ownership was like, you know, if you own your own home, then you're more likely to take responsibility for it, you're more likely to take responsibility for yourselves, you're more likely to make sure that you've got a job, you know, and that's what she saw. She saw that home ownership was part of making people take responsibility for themselves and not have the state support them. And she cut back on things like social security and stuff like that as well, to say, look, you know, we've all got to do our bit. And so she was quite firm in that way. But a lot of people, of course, hated that.
Yeah, I think it's wrong to hate. I think it's right. Well, there's so many people that take the mickey with this system now. You know, like, I mean, you've had these discussions on other nights about people like, you know, why the NHS is so run on, not because there's that many people taking the fee. But, you know, like, we need someone who's going to stand up and say, look, no more of this, right? Yeah, if you've got genuine reasons to be out of work for illnesses, then fair enough. But there's a lot of people that haven't, they just, you know, I know a couple of people who make out they've got back pains and they can't really work. Oh, shut up, I've got back pain as well. I'll still work, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, it's about having the attitude. You want to go out there and earn it. You know, and a lot of people are like, no, it's too easy. It's too easy for them to sit back for a second. I mean, I know a person who gets like nearly up the same as what I'll get in a year when I'm on the dole. And I know I'm working in it. I feel that ain't fair. I have to pay more of the rent, the council tax, water, everything. Whereas they get all that free, you know, and I'm like,
and I think, and it. Look, I do think we need somebody who's going to stand up and shake people down, and maybe. But who do you think that might be? Do you think that?
I don't know. I think you might disagree big time with me here.
Nigel Farage.
I think I'm going on the reform side here, and. I'm not thinking Nigel. I don't think Nigel Farage is a leader. I think he's more of a negotiator and a Nicky taker, if you know what I mean. But I think if somebody was going to take over from Nigel Farage, I'd go for Rupert Lowe, to be honest with you. And, you know.
Okay.
I've seen a few of his discussions that he's made. A lot of it is about immigration, but it's not just about immigration. But I think it's about when I look at the immigration not being vetted. To be vetted. If people are going to come into the country, then they've got to contribute. I mean, and you know, I ain't got a problem with people coming in as well, you know, and put taxes into the system.
Yeah, as long as they're working. But I feel that way about the people who were born here as well. You know, because you know, I've done phone-ins on this topic for decades now, and you know, you get people who say, well, I don't work, but my grandparents paid into the system, and I go, well, that's got nothing to do with it. You haven't paid in. Yeah, but I have a right. It's my right. And you go, it isn't your right. In the same way that it shouldn't be my burden to pay for you, right? So I do agree with that. I just hope we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, because I like the fact that there's a safety net. I love the fact there's a welfare state. I don't mind paying into the welfare state as long as it's paid out correctly.
True. I said with Rupert Lowe, I don't know. I mean, it's the only one that, to be honest, the only one that I've seen I've watched a lot of YouTube, and the only one I've seen that really made a lot of sense compared to all the others. The others are just like children in the playground arguing with one another. You know,
I agree.
It's just really childish.
I agree, and look, no one blames you or judges you on that, because that's what you're looking for, and most people are looking for a strong leader, and I think that's why Margaret Thatcher's reputation has sustained. Even if you're not naturally a Tory, you can't help but look at her and go, do you know what? There's a lot to be said for that. There's a lot to be said. And when we look at Keir Starmer, who's so honestly so wet, it's ridiculous.
Oh. I have to, every time I see him on TV or whatever, I just turn up. His voice just gets to me.
I wish I could. I have to listen to his drony voice.
Bless you.
I know.
Bless you.
But it's
just, he gives me the creeps. I mean, I said something years ago. It was on when he took over from Corbyn, and he went into a pub somewhere down south, and the bloke was going mad at him to get out. Don't like you, shouldn't. I don't want you in my pub. And the way he walked around, so arrogant as well. And back then, when I seen that, I thought there's something about that guy there that I didn't like. And when he come into power, he's starting to prove it. He's such a liar, the biggest liar I've ever met. Yeah, a lot of politicians are badly built on liars, ain't it? A lot of it over the years, but he just takes the mickey when it comes to lying.
Do you know what? I'm just losing. I mean, I didn't have much respect in the first place. I had hope, but I had no respect. Because to not hope is just mean, right? So you hope that the right decision has been made, because I want everybody to have a decent quality of life. So I hoped it was the right decision. I think it's palpably obvious now that it possibly wasn't. But you know, I can't bear the fact that, you know, these tariffs have been thrown onto our steel industry. It's going to cost the country $24 billion, and Keir Starmer said nothing. Where is he?
He said everything, didn't he? He's scared. He's running scared.
Yeah, he's scared of Trump.
Yeah, because he said some bad things about him. Now he's regretting what he said.
Yeah.
I mean, like, because it's going to backfire on him, and now he's like.
So now he's sucking up. Now he's sucking up to him, or you know, not signing the AI safety bill because America didn't. It's all pathetic. It's embarrassing.
It's so poor. The leadership is the poorest I've ever seen it ever. You know, I've only been into politics probably the last few years of my life as I've got older. When I was younger, I noticed it, but I never really took any, you know, really bothered. But like I said with Margaret Thatcher, she had balls of steel. She made decisions on the spot and stuck to them. You know what I mean? And like, some people might disagree. And some people, I don't agree with the miners thing, but it was inevitable because China was undercutting everything. You know, and like a lot of businesses went out to China because it's getting the cheaper labour, which is wrong again. You know what I mean? It's like. Like, you know, like using the people over there to profit to profit themselves. It's another thing that's wrong. But it was inevitable that all that was going to happen. But I did feel sorry for the miners, the way I was treated in a way, as well.
I mean that was a shameful time in history. Like I said, my father was an industrial correspondent, I think, during that time. So he spent a lot of time down on the picket lines. But yeah, I mean, it's a blur to me. I wasn't that old enough really, but you know, it was certainly pervasive, and it sucked the joy out of the whole country. But she still succeeded, and she won.
Sorry, I think it's an hard one, Eddie. Who's going to run the country that's going to please everybody? It's never going to happen, is it? You know, I mean,
and I don't think she didn't care about pleasing everybody. And that's I think that is where strength in leadership comes. You can't please everybody, like Keir Starmer's trying to do. You can't ride two horses at the same time. You can't try and suck up to the EU and suck up to Donald Trump at the same time. It's just not going to work. So you can't please everybody all the time. And that is, I think, where Margaret Thatcher's strength came from. She didn't want to please everybody all the time.
Yeah. True.
So maybe we do, well, I don't know. Do we need another Thatcher? Great call, Jason. Thank you. That's the question. I mean, look, looking back, do we need another Margaret Thatcher? That's it. 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
Hi, good morning. It's Petrie here until 1 o'clock, and we're talking about Margaret Thatcher. It was 50 years ago that she became the leader of the Tory party in 1975, and in 1979 she became Prime Minister, the first ever woman, and the first woman, I think, across Europe as well. So she's a very significant character. And we're talking there about the politicians of today, and you know how Keir Starmer just doesn't seem to be able to grasp anything, I think, and his relationship with Donald Trump. Well, the most enduring relationship ever was Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan. That was where the great relationship between the United States and the UK really blossomed. They absolutely adored each other. It's a fame. I mean, Ronald Reagan, I don't think actually was the real Prime Minister. I think it was Nancy, his wife. He was an actor, wasn't he? And I think he started to sort of, you know, get a bit dementia at some point. But he and Margaret Thatcher absolutely adored each other, and they sort of paired up against the Soviet Union through the Cold War. Until Mikhail Gorbachev came along in 1985, who of course was reform-minded, and he's somebody, Mikhail Gorbachev is somebody that Putin will never forgive, never forgive, along with Boris Yeltsin. So it was an interesting time. Yeah, her nickname, the Iron Lady, was given to her in the Soviet press in a 1976 speech where she condemned communism, and she and Ronald Reagan were vehemently anti-communist together, but they absolutely adored each other. I mean, really were very actually genuinely close and friends. Let's and we could do with a bit of, I don't know, a bit of that as well, maybe. Carol is in Manchester. Hello, good morning, Carol.
Good morning.
How are you?
Good morning. I'm absolutely fantastic.
Oh, I'm glad to hear it.
I am absolutely celebrating Maggie Thatcher.
Okay. What did you love about her?
The reason why I am is, like, she's the first woman in that area in that decade, you know, like, to get through with men.
Oh, I mean, she was inspirational. I mean, there's literally no question about that. All those women and girls that would have looked at her and gone, oh my God, a woman. That's amazing. And the fact that she reigned or ruled for so long and won 3 elections, you know, it wasn't just a woman like, dare I say, Rachel Reeves, who everybody's going, oh, she's rubbish. This was a woman that, whether you loved her or hated her, she was powerful.
And it is. At that era, it was a different time. I worked with over 400-500 people at that time, you know, like with it. I weren't young enough to vote for the first person, you know, like, and the second person, you know, like in that area, you know, like with her, you know, like, honest to God, it was scary. Women were scared to vote for her. I'm going to let you know now. Absolutely, we were absolutely petrified.
Why?
Because we had to vote for Labour where I lived.
Oh, right, yeah.
Where I lived and where I'm living now, and I won't go through where I'm going through now, you know, like with it.
So there's literally no way you could have voted Tory?
No way. No way on this earth could you absolutely, you know, like, for Labour, it was awful. And
was it Jimmy Callaghan? I'm trying to look. We're trying to remember who it was with Labour. Can't remember. I've got it written down somewhere. I did write it down. But yeah, I mean, look, the Labour was was considered to be really weak. And in fact, at the one time they could have got Thatcher out, this is when they were accused of writing the longest suicide message in history. That's what it was called. Their manifesto was called the longest suicide note in history or something like that. Yeah,
exactly.
Because they were very, very weak.
At that time then, there was loads of people that were in industrial places. We had miners. We had everything. You know, like she chose them. And don't forget, you know, like with Maggie, God bless her, you know, like I did take that up in my era, you know, like to have your own home. And unfortunate, you know, like she did the best with it. She did want us to have that middle class, not that upper class or loner class. Or
yeah, it was
whatever.
about taking responsibility. It was James Callaghan, I thought it was. But yeah, she wanted people to take responsibility for themselves.
Exactly.
She wanted, if you owned a house, you were more likely to work hard, you were more likely to support yourself, you were less likely to rely on benefits.
I've got it.
Yeah.
I've got it. That's me and lots of others at my age. I've got it. We've got it. Unfortunate, you know, like taking up the I never took a council house anyway at that time or whatever, you know, like. But at that time when she literally stated to us, you know, like we could be not just the, you know, like we could be. I don't know what it is, you know, low class, middle class, high class. She absolutely taught us, you know, like to be somewhat more than what we were.
Yeah.
And I am. And I am that person, and I am with my kids and with her, Maggie. Unfortunate, at the end of the day, if it weren't for her, I probably wouldn't have got where I've got.
Yeah, I mean, there are millions of people generationally that wouldn't have property, wouldn't be where they are if it weren't for Margaret Thatcher, even if they hated her, right? Even if they hated her politics.
Exactly.
And she really worked very hard on education as well, to try and get. She brought in. I think she brought in comprehensive.
Told you know, like with my 3 kids.
Yeah.
They're all. They're up there, not like me and my husband. They're up there.
Yeah, she created more and more comprehensive schools.
All that what she said in my head, in my little head, is like what I portrayed it, and I worked it out with. And so, thank you for Maggie. That's all I can say.
Yeah. Well, Carol, I think you speak for a lot of people, and I just wish we had. I mean, look, like I said, you may not. I don't agree with Margaret Thatcher and everything, not in everything that she did, but looking at it purely from an academic point of view, and looking at what she tried to achieve and what she was able to achieve, not just as a woman, and not just as a female prime minister, and not just as the longest-serving prime minister and the most election wins. She, you know, not just that is inspirational, but her beliefs were more, I think, more aligned to mine, and I sort of believe in small government. I believe in small government. I believe in the autonomy to live the lives that we need and want to live without breaking the law. And I believe that the government should keep their blinking noses out of it. And I'm afraid that also includes that you know, that at the moment the government is so big and we're so reliant on the nanny state, and the whole thing is just like, oh, I don't know how to bring up my children anymore, let's ask the government to do it. Or I don't know how to do that anymore, I think I'll ask the government to do it. You know, we've lost that critical thinking or that drive to be self-reliant, and that is because we've become too reliant on big government. And I don't think Margaret Thatcher believed in big government. She believed in hands-off governing, if you like, and taking personal responsibility. Robert is in Hertfordshire. Good morning,
Hello
Robert.
there, Petrie. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, fine. Like I said to you before, we live in a beautiful bungalow in Hertfordshire, And I'm really and truly, I owe that all to Maggie Thatcher. She gave us the opportunity, me and my wife, 30-odd years ago, to buy our council, which was half a Georgian house, which nobody wanted in those days, because they was all drafty. Everybody wanted the new build. And I think, and we was always hard working. I think what swayed it for us, my wife was queuing up behind someone in the rent office one day, and we was paying £100 a week rent in those days. And there was a girl in front. She said, "I want to pay 10 weeks rent. It's 20 quid for 10 weeks rent." So Linda went, "Oh, this is ridiculous. You know, we've got to buy our place." And that's what we did. I think what done it for her was the poll tax, because that was the biggest mistake she ever made, because she hit everybody at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was a terrible time for her, but I think she still won after that. Well, she did because she was leader until 1990. So even though there was the poll tax, but then there was the bomb in Brighton in 1984. And she got rid of Ken Livingstone and the GLC in London, but she still won another election, even after the poll tax, because what Labour was offering was considered to be a good deal weaker.
Well, the ironic thing is, and I laugh about it now, and it ain't really funny. She took on Arthur Scargill, the miners, and lo and behold, he gets caught trying to buy his own council place in the Barbican a few years later.
How surprising.
Yeah.
How surprising.
The hypocrisy of the left. There you go.
Yeah.
But she gave us a bit of pride. But I mean, I never ever considered myself a Tory. I just considered me and my wife someone who went to work and paid our bills.
Yeah, and the thing that Thatcher did do was say, look, if you're prepared to do that and you're prepared to work, then we should be prepared to help you get on the property ladder, not with some stupid scheme, but actually saying you can buy your house. And it's so interesting now that Angela Rayner, having done that herself, a Labour government minister, has done it herself. She bought her own council tax at discount, is trying to take that away from the next generation.
Emily Thornberry, she done it. She bought her brother's one. If you go into it, I mean, look at the Blairs. Biggest property portfolio, you know.
I know, absolutely ridiculous. Oh no, hang on a minute, I'm wrong historically. She won her third electoral victory in 1987, and it was the poll tax in 89. And then it was the rank and file, the Tories, as they do always, turned on her.
But wasn't tired, wasn't it? Really, I mean, he was the ringleader, the Guy Fawkes of it all.
And then we got John Major.
Yeah, they even had the backstabbers back in them days, the Tories. You know.
Oh yeah, always in the Tories. The one thing the Tories are really good at is saving their own skin.
You know what they called her first of all? They called her Thatcher the milk snatcher. But the thing was, she was right to do away with that, because no one ever drank it anyway.
Oh, it was disgusting. It was disgusting.
It was that nobody drank it. They just used to throw it about in the playground, you know.
In those little glass bottles. What happened at your school?
In the end, you know, and it just used to make milk bombs. She was right to do that. But she was scary, weren't she? I mean, let's face it. She was very condescending as well. I mean, she had that.
Oh, she didn't suffer fools, did she? And I think we do need a little bit of that now.
Yeah, you haven't got that.
No.
Woke could. I don't know how she'd get on with the woke. That'd be great. I'd love to see it. You know.
I mean, just for a day, wouldn't that be interesting to see?
And her spitting image puppet was brilliant.
Oh my God, spitting image was incredible. Yeah, I met him as well. He's so good. Yeah, I mean, spitting image of its day was the best thing. Do you remember they had John Major?
Shouldn't they? They should bring that back. Imagine now.
Yeah, John Major. Well, they tried it, but it didn't work because there isn't the satire anymore. But John Major was literally a grey puppet who used to talk about eating peas all the time. That always used to make me laugh.
Because he was used to keep going up and down. Was it Paul Daniels?
No, he was a Lib Dem. He was always David. He was always little. David Steele.
David Steele.
David Steele. Yeah, I think that was the one with the hair. He was always really, really tiny. He always made it really, really tiny. Oh, I loved it. I did love it. Great to talk to you, Robert, and thank you for the memory there of the spitting image. Right, I'm going to take a quick break, but I will be back in a moment to talk to Mark.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, good morning. It's Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock. That gives us about 10 minutes. I've just found the messages. I was looking at the wrong screen. Kevin has messaged in and said, I was unemployed when Margaret Thatcher came to power. Under the government, they introduced a scheme called the Youth Opportunity Scheme. It was a sort of way of getting you off the dole and into some sort of work experience. Labour are going to do that soon here, I reckon. It was branded as slave labour at the time back then and was thought to be a way of fiddling the unemployment figures. You literally had to go on the scheme or have your benefits suspended. I hated the Tories and Margaret Thatcher in particular, but I did the scheme working in the steel industry for 12 months. Fast forward 45 years and I'm still working in the same industry. So I have to give credit to her for pushing me into work and for all the good things that come with being in work. In the pursuit of power, reward and control for a few at the price of the many, Thatcher split Britain. She created arrogant and greedy banking, leading to the inevitable 2008 crash. I see no reason to celebrate her. I mean, also, she privatised everything, didn't she? I mean, British Steel was gone on, not British Steel, British Gas. Thatcher would not have put up with the problems of today: immigration, law and order, high taxes, unions running the country, benefit fraud, poor housing policy. She would have completed Brexit. I'm sending this from Queensland, Australia. I met Dennis, great fun. He enjoyed his golf, and that's from Barry. He says it's 10:13 here. How nice. Thatcher turned the country around. She made mistakes, but she was honest and had vision. There hasn't been a leader and a parliamentarian like her since. She had more integrity than any of our MPs today. We need another Thatcher, but new and improved. And that was from Andrew in Salisbury. And this one, Theresa May was the right Prime Minister at the wrong time. If she didn't have to deal with the mess of Brexit, she'd still be in power now. The closest thing we ever had to Thatcher. Kevin, that's really interesting because people always say to me that Theresa May was the best Prime Minister we never had. Because you're right, she couldn't be Prime Minister. So a lot of people do agree with you on that. Right, let's talk to Mark, who's in Bristol. Morning, Mark.
Good morning, Patrick.
Good morning. How are you? How's Bristol?
Well, it's not well, which is a good thing.
God, it's so revolting down here. Anyway, what do you think about Thatcher?
Well, I'm 60 years of age, so I lived through it.
Right.
I think she took on a very difficult time where she had to actually take on the unions because somebody did, and she did. But at the same time, she had to sacrifice the public to do it.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I mean, she had to, because the Labour government before under James Callaghan had been completely overtaken by unionists.
Yeah, but I remember 4 days a week, power cuts.
That was the 70s, wasn't it? I think that was before Thatcher.
No, it was during Thatcher.
It was the 70s were the four-day weeks, I thought, and the unions were not picking up the rubbish, and everything was piled high in the streets.
No, it's Thatcher taking on the unions that caused all of that.
Because she was elected in '79, so it could still have been. Could still have been. But she did inherit a very weak economy and a very inefficient.
The unions ran the country.
Yeah, yeah, and so she did decide to. But mind you, she pushed up unemployment to 3 million.
That's purely
in 1986.
She took on the unions, so the unions then battered their hatches down to try and get her out.
Mm. And it didn't work because she wasn't going.
She wouldn't go.
But I mean, look, do you think that, on balance, I mean, some people just say, I hate everything about her, I hate her. She did no good, she was awful, she was vile, and I can see that. I mean, I'm looking at it objectively. I don't have politics, I'm not a fan of the Tories, I'm not a fan of Labour. I just try to look at things objectively. And objectively, she did good things and she did bad things. I think that's the fairest thing to say.
I think she did good things where she could do them, and the bad things she did were because the unions couldn't let her do it.
Plus, I mean, she did privatise everything, but I think her principle of that was to relieve the burden of the off the taxpayer. But of course, what that's done is it's created a burden we've got now that would not have been there had she not done that.
Yeah, but I think she's trying to give the power to the people, whereas the unions were more powerful than the people.
Oh, indeed they were. There's no, again, like I said, my dad was industrial correspondent, so I grew up meeting the likes of Ray Buckton, who was a train drivers union leader, and all of those people. I spent a lot of time.
They were much more powerful.
Yeah, they were. They were. Mind you, the RMT is pretty powerful today, isn't it? But they really were incredibly powerful. But I just think that objectively speaking, the right to buy was probably a good idea. She believed in a small state. She believed in, less involvement from the state. All of those things are my politics. I don't believe that we should have a nanny state. I don't agree with everybody getting everything, whenever they just feel like they want it or they need it, that you look after yourself, you look after your family, and you bring people up in the right way. I've always believed that.
I think she's trying to give that to people.
Yeah.
But other unions and other political parties try to...
Well, Labour loves big state. Labour has always loved big state. That's why, these, all the public sector workers and all of that, they always love a Labour government because they love it and they increase it and we get more and more public servants and we get more. They love a big state, and that is the opposite to what Margaret Thatcher, I think, was trying to achieve. Good to talk to you, Mark. I'm just finishing because I want to squeeze Dan in from Liverpool.
Hello there. How's your night going?
It's really well, thank you. I've only got a couple of minutes left of it. So what do you think of Thatcher?
I think no politician to this day could hold a candle to Margaret Thatcher. I think it will be quite ironic how historians will say we've gone from the Iron Lady to the empty tin man in Keir Starmer.
Very good.
Well,
I like that.
I'm glad you liked that.
Yeah, I enjoyed that. Yeah, I mean, look, I think there is something to be said about that because he is so wet, and you know, Rishi Sunak was wet, and there's just nothing there to, you know what I mean? There was no grit to it.
It's the belief in our establishment of the current moment. There's a great speech I advise anyone watch it of Margaret Thatcher. You probably will know which one I'm talking about, where she goes on about the death penalty. And the way she presents herself, you believe every word. You have conviction in what she believes in, where today's politicians, I couldn't believe one word of them if they were to tell me the sky was blue.
And that, I think that is really sad, isn't it? Because I think we all feel like that. But is that the fault of the politicians that we've got, or is that the fault of just where we are in history? You know, was she just of her time with that was, or would she be remarkable today? I think she'd be remarkable.
She would be absolutely remarkable today. The relationship that you said she had with Ronald Reagan, if Keir Starmer was any leader, he would have made sure David Lammy and the rest of his Labour team stood in line when Donald Trump was elected, instead of doing his dodgy deal, sending 100